I don't really, and we don't know all the specifics yet. So I don't really see how, to be honest, like specifically.
Okay.
I think that the pullout was going to be a total mess no matter what. But yeah.
I agree. I agree. I think it was going to be a miss no matter what because, like I was saying, we made them depend on us to an extent where as soon as we leave, it's done. So I think we handled it as best we could because we've been trying to pull out troops for at least 2 years. I think it was 2 years or 3 years.
Well,
So we need to
I
get
don't
on it
really-
eventually.
they began a
I don't
truce
really think-
process last year, and then the large part of the reason why Biden did the pullout was that they have the truce that they've agreed to, right? So that's why
Yeah,
there
that
haven't
was
been
the
any
thing.
NATO coalition fatalities in the last like few months.
You're correct.
Or whatever, right?
Mhm.
I'm just going to add one thing and then I have to leave. So I'll just say one thing. The pullout was always going to be a mess because it was like a mistake to station that many troops there in the first place. So in my opinion, the only plausible solution for this problem could have been that the US should have withdrawn. First of all, I believe that it should have attacked Afghanistan. It shouldn't have invaded Afghanistan. The only plausible way for them to succeed, help Afghanistan, would have been to support the opposition that the Taliban were having from the internal groups. That is the only way. They could have supported them with arms or training, but they should have never gone in with their own army. So this actually created a too evil situation for the Afghan people. So they can't actually side with any of these groups, actually, neither the US Army nor the Taliban. So if and even today, I think the best solution is first to pull out, and then wait and see, allow the Afghan people to form a local opposition, a militia, or a group that is fighting the Taliban, and then support them politically, financially, and then allow them to regain their country by themselves. So this is the only plausible solution, in my opinion.
Hello, can
How's
y'all
it
hear
going,
me?
guys?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello.
That's it.
All right.
In my opinion, I don't think we could have done anything different. It's just basically just a war of attrition. It's whoever can last the longest. That's what I think. I think I think it didn't really matter if we pulled out sooner or later. It would have happened either way.
I just
I
wanted
think we
That's
to
my
try-
opinion.
jump in here
I
and
think we
say,
could try to evacuate citizens a little bit before, and then evacuated. And then evacuated our troops.
Well, no, I don't.
That's
There,
the case. There are still 6,000 U.S. troops in Afghanistan. So.
Yeah, I was saying, and then we can start trickling out our troops after we get the citizens out that want to be out.
yeah, but then the thing is that they didn't want out until the Taliban had control of the presidential palace in Kabul, until they gained
Well-
control.
but they
don't
waited
think
way too long
it's-
to leave. Like the whole country was taken over before Kabul. Like everyone should have known weeks ago. The fact that everyone was scrambling out was crazy. But Britain, at the very height of the British Empire, got its ass kicked trying to invade Afghanistan. The Soviet Union, at the height of the Soviet Union, probably partially became bankrupt over trying to invade Afghanistan. And America, at the height of the American Empire, got kicked out after 20 years of this and billions of dollars. That country is impenetrable. I'm completely convinced that no group of humans will ever march in that country and invade it militarily.
Well, I
Okay.
mean,
It's
Fair.
geographically,
the
it's somewhat
American-
impossible.
the American invasion was successful. It's just a matter of like clamping out the Taliban. I mean, 'cause
Yeah,
and you say also the thing with the British, but I feel like people don't even know what happened there because like you're talking about like multiple interventions over the course of like almost like 100 years, of which like I don't know about the third one, but like two of them were successful in the end. I mean, they were just couple-year invasions.
I
right?
guess it
And then
depends
they
on how you
installed their own government. Like, because yeah, go ahead.
I guess it depends on how you define successful. I just mean that it's been an economic disaster for every empire that's tried to engage in this. It's always led to a debasement of a currency and a ballooning debt and basically the fall of Britain from a giant empire, like economically. And Osama bin Laden was quoted.
Afghanistan was not related to the fall of the British Empire. You're getting timeline that's up there.
The amount
the
of
British
money
Empire,
spent
like ended in like the 40s and 50s. Like yeah.
Well,
I don't
yeah,
know why
but
someone
when
just
did they
DM'd
start
me to ask
debasing
the
their
beak, by the way,
the
but
pound?
Yeah, sorry.
But
I don't know. When did they?
Well, I don't know the history well enough to cite
right,
everything
well,
off my head. But
then,
The USSR did, so I think that's a valid point.
yeah, no, the USSR's invasion was a disaster for them. That is true. It's just that I think that people can be a little simplistic and create a broad, large narrative when you're talking about hundreds of years of history. That's my only problem with some of the statements like that. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. I think that it's almost geographically impossible, or is impossible, to invade and hold Afghanistan, mostly due to the geography of the Middle East and the areas surrounding Afghanistan, and the spirit of the enemy that we are fighting.
Well, it's also there's no centralized authority really. I mean, it's a bunch of little tribal, chiefs. I mean, there's really nowhere to centrally take power. It's almost like a libertarian utopia in a kind of way, like at least an extreme like ANCAP kind of idea. But I don't know who do you attack. You would have to, at the end of the day, as long as there are people there that are opposed to centralized government, everyone is armed. Everyone, you know what I mean? It's like. I don't know what you would do to declare victory over an invasion.
It's an
of
armed
Afghanistan.
terrorist country. That's really what the Taliban is going to make Afghanistan.
Is for centralized government. The Taliban is now forming a centralized government. I mean,
that's their plan, at least.
The United States set up a centralized government, and I mean, I've heard people say this too, that like they think that Afghanistan was some kind of nomadic or like just totally fractured. Like Afghanistan has existed as a polity, like with a centralized government in some form or another, whether it was weak or corrupt or whatever, for like 100 years, like or plus, like more than that. Sorry, like 150 years. Like I mean, it depends on what exactly you're talking about, but like so I don't know. That's not even like fully true. It's more that the government the U.S. backed up was like very weak, and yes, there were large tribal elements in it, and that's the problem with the disunity. But like, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, a centralized enforcement figure, like some governing body with a monopoly on the use of force that could concede in a military conflict for the whole country, for everyone in the country.
Yeah, that exists.
Yeah, they had a king.
That exists in Taliban. Sorry, in Afghanistan, there were two of them. There's the ANA, which is now fallen, and then there's and the Taliban is now establishing its own. Like, I mean, like centrally, yeah, and they had the king before. Yeah, he's right. Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Wait, have we talked about the immigration problems that could come up because of evacuating the citizens of Kabul that are trying to flee the government?
Macro mentioned it a little bit. Small
What
point
do
of it.
you
But we
guys
haven't
think
really
it's
gone
gonna?
over it.
What do you guys think it's gonna do to the United States and the Americas? Because they're planning to take all the refugees to Minnesota and to Texas, from what I hear. I'm pretty sure, right?
How many people is this? Is this?
Yeah, I have no clue what you're talking about.
All the people that are trying to. Have you seen on the news about all the people that are trying to ride home? They're so desperate to try to get onto the.
They fell off the plane.
I've heard about that, but you talked about a specific
I heard about
thing. How many people are they bringing to Minnesota?
Yeah, I have no clue.
It's not. Well, no. It's not mostly just about single states. It's about the country. We're bringing in tens of thousands of refugees into our country, which is just
like
gonna
300 million people.
Well, but that's right, but
it's not
at
a big
the same
issue.
time, we already have an immigration problem.
The vast majority of the refugee crisis in Afghanistan is going to be felt in like Central Asia, Iran, and Pakistan. It is not going to be felt in the United States.
It will, though.
No, it will not.
It won't.
It's like the Syrian refugee crisis, where like some people show up in boats in like the shores of Europe, and it's like, oh my god! And then like Lebanon, meanwhile, has to house like 1.5 million people when it's a country of like 7 million people.
Then where do you think they're evacuating all those people? Where do you think they're all taking them?
I mean, they're gonna take some people that were primarily affiliated with like they're doing in my country too, Canada. We're gonna take in about 20,000 people.
That's a lot of people, though.
Yeah, I mean, okay, great. These countries based
but I mean, but for you, you don't have an immigrant.
Trained specialists, trained like
you have a point. You're right. I understand.
Wait.
But like,
these are people.
Your country doesn't really have an immigration problem.
What do you
local?
Extremely large rates of immigration. I'm pro it, but yeah.
Local. How does this personally affect you though? Like, what are you trying to bring up here? Because I don't really see it's a problem.
I'm not saying it's personally affecting me. I'm saying it's going to affect the immigration problem that we already have.
Okay.
Currently in the United States.
Okay.
Right. Well, people, I don't know.
It's not a big deal.
All right. But yeah, I'm pro taking in people. Whatever. It's just that the vast majority of that refugee.
I'm not really. I don't think. I mean, I'm not against taking in people as long as they're going through the legal process to legally come into the United States. You know,
Yeah, they're
like
legally
getting their
coming. I mean,
visas and all that. I'm
What is
talking. Well,
legal?
these are people who are being
they're
like brought over in like American like planes and stuff. Like they're like directed by
yeah.
the government and the military. These are not like
Yep.
people who are just like overstaying a visa.
Javier, by legally, I mean people that are going through the immigration process and getting their visas and like going through the process to get American citizenship
Yeah,
instead of
but
just
Okay.
trying
well,
to
okay,
get
but
into
then
the country without going
you
through
would
that
be
process.
fine with the
Yeah.
refugees who in the immediate future are going to be admitted by America because these are people who are being brought in via a legal process. If you're talking about the people who are being like who were friends like and allies of the United States and who are being evacuated, they're allied with us like and they are being
They
legally
are getting
admitted.
American citizenship. I know what you mean.
Yeah. So then what's the problem?
We're
Yeah,
not
what's
gonna
the problem if they're gonna get legalized before
nah,
they even get
not
there?
everybody that's fleeing Afghanistan is associated or has helped America.
Why not? What?
Not
That's
every
just
I mean, okay, but
that's just moving the
who are you
goalposts at that
referring
point.
to specifically?
Like,
Because you brought up the
yeah,
people who are being specifically moved. I mean, is it possible that some people are going to show up eventually from Afghanistan? I mean, I guess. I don't see why they would come all the way to the United States. I imagine it'll be a smaller amount of people. It'll be the vast majority of it. Like with the Syrian refugee crisis, will be in like neighboring countries. Like,
it's a bit of a whataboutism. You just keep,
I don't know.
adding some stuff to it.
It just feels like a panic issue. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
But yeah, does anyone have better takes about like the like Afghanistan itself? Because I mean, the immigration issue is a little side thing. I don't know. Not, yeah.
That's a bigger
Yeah,
issue in
so
itself. You can
Have
go
we
ahead.
already
I
said
could
everything about Afghanistan, or
I could
have we?
link
Is there?
this
I
to
think
We haven't
so.
touched yet.
I felt that people, I don't know, I feel that people have a lot of like really weird ideas about the war. Like they don't know
Yeah.
any of the background information. Like there was that one guy earlier who was saying like, oh, we came in for natural resources, and it's like, what are you talking about?
He's not wrong either. I mean,
I said that.
the
I said
America,
that.
the United
He is
States did
okay.
have an interest in the oil and
The
There's
American.
no
oil,
oil in
Not
Afghanistan.
just
There's
oil.
oil in
there's
Not just oil.
Afghanistan. Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't say. I
There's
said in the Middle
Oh
only
East,
Lord.
not specifically one country.
But we're
there's
talking about the
lithium and opium
intervention.
in Afghanistan. No oil.
I never
And
said
Yeah.
Afghanistan. I said the Middle
We're
East,
talking about
which is
Afghanistan,
a
so he was
collection of
wrong.
countries.
but I mean,
No, no,
even
I-
really, the idea that it was because they were sheltering terrorists. I mean, if it was sheltering terrorists, then Pakistan would be there too, and we're I mean, not allied with Pakistan, but we're friendly enough with them. I mean, I don't know what we went in there for. I don't know what the whole Bush-Cheney thing was about in general. I don't really understand why we went into Iraq. Really, I
Oh,
haven't heard a
Lord
great
Cheney.
argument for it at all.
But
Mostly,
Well-
I've just heard that it was for oil and to get
Afghans.
quote unquote revenge for 9/11. That's basically what I've heard of and what I believe.
Afghan is extremely rich in minerals. So yeah, you could make an argument. Then yeah, they were going in for natural resources.
not in 2001. Most of these are rare earth minerals, which were not known about. I mean, this guy put in chat, for example,
What?
Stage Chat put that
Okay.
they discovered 1.6 billion barrels of oil in Afghanistan in 2010.
Well,
So that's
look,
great.
let's
The
just
war
get rid of
started
the
in
oil.
2001. No, I know, but I mean, even with the rare earth minerals, which is the related claim that people bring
Yeah,
up,
yeah.
that's a more recent development where that's important.
That's a
Now,
more recent
2001, that was not the motivation, and even to say that it's
Yeah,
now, it
I
doesn't
agree.
even make that much sense.
I agree that yeah, you're
I-
correct.
As a matter of fact,
Originally, it
if
was
you
not
want
for
to
that.
talk about a natural resource motivation for war, there was a company that wanted to drill oil in the mid '90s. An American company wanted to drill oil in a region of Afghanistan. Afghanistan is not particularly rich in oil, but they wanted to drill oil, and as a result, the government and the Taliban controlled Afghanistan at the time, and as a result, the government was a little like the U.S. was a little like, we'll be a little less critical of the Taliban for the time being, right? But then, so like to claim that then that this subsequent invasion was for like natural resources, it just doesn't really make much sense. Like, I mean, there would have been better ways to obtain said natural resources.
I mean,
it's right
up there with the
most
people
of
who say that we went in to get the poppy fields to make everyone heroin addicts. Like, it's just not true. It like the amount of
What?
natural resources in Afghanistan is nowhere near what we spent.
Opium.
I think that Bush and Cheney thought that they could draw a diagonal line through the Middle East and turn it into Europe. I think they really thought that they could democratize and just totally bring the Middle East into modernity that easily, and I think it's been a horrible failure. But I think almost all of the ideas of our intelligence agencies when it comes to just walking into other countries has been horrible failures. But I do think there's an incentive in the United States with the amount of money that goes on with defense spending to like propagate endless wars. I mean, we haven't won a war since post World War II. It's all been just these like endless conflicts that really seem to have little point. But it sells a lot of military.
They
equipment.
had at
More
the time
power.
they had a reason. It's not like that they were completely pointless.
The war. I mean, the U.S. won the Gulf War, for example. I mean, like, I don't know. Like the claim that they won absolutely none of the military interventions is a bit like no, it's not true. The longer, and in fact, and in many ways, I mean, if you're talking about like win as in like in the long-term fight, like that 20-year like insurgency, yeah, sure. I mean, like Afghanistan in the end has turned out to be a failure, right? But there are but to paint it entirely as all losses, I think is a little bit simplifying. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, we kept Iraq out of Kuwait, but then Saddam was like one of our closest allies until, you know, like I don't know, what did we really win by keeping Iraq out of Kuwait? What is the point of the amount of money we spent?
I'm not saying that that like ideologically I was defending it. I was saying that militarily and strategically to claim that they lost all those wars is just like incorrect, is what I was saying.
Well, sure, but I'm just saying I think there is an economic incentive, not like a conspiracy, like a cabal of people plotting this shit. But I think there's just because of the amount of money, is an incentive to keep us consistently involved in some kind of military conflict.
That is very
true. So much money in defense spending.
It's the military complex system. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called.
The military industrial complex.
There we go. I knew I was missing a word, but you knew what I meant.
I kind of have a couple points about the alternatives for obtaining oil and how someone said that earlier the reason for all the conflicts in the Middle East was for natural resources like Afghanistan. That's not. I mean, it's not really entirely true, but it's also kind of not really true at the same. I don't know. It's a massive brain fuck for me.
It's just
really, it's kind of is, but kind of isn't because there's not really.
True.
Well, I mean, it's kind of not true because I guess according to some people there is oil in Afghanistan, but then to some people there is.
Okay, but just because oil exists in a country and said country is invaded does not mean that said country was invaded for the oil. You have to connect the dots there, right?
You have a point.
Yeah, like people will say like a classic example is like people will say like with like I don't know, like any country, like a country. Well, I think of like the recent example, relatively recent, like Bolivia. People will say like the coup there, and I don't mean to shift the topic at all. I'm just bringing it up as an example. People will say the coup there entirely due to like seizing lithium and whatever, and it's like, but then you fail to connect the dots, right? You fail to connect that claim to the actual act of taking said lithium or whatever, right? So instead of the case of Afghanistan, what was the actual like steps that led to taking these natural resources? What shows that this was the motivation?
I think that the argument that I've heard that is the most convincing is to have some kind of military strategic positioning around Iran and the south of China. That it does make the most sense for me. If we could have like I don't want to say domesticated, but I don't know, for lack of a better term, if we could have modernized Afghanistan and stuck a big missile defense system right on Iran and China's south side, I think that would have been. I think
but
that's
then what
something
would
that
have
you
been
would
the point of that?
Well, that's the point, right? That is the much larger.
What would be the point of that,
like
though?
Afghanistan's massive geostrategic position, like very important geostrategic position.
It is. I mean, we did the same thing to Russia with Romania and Ukraine.
Hey, I'm not to interrupt. I just want to point out to the audience, if you want a chance to join, please join the server. And you need to raise your hand, obviously, because I won't bring you up. And here's another thing. A lot of people who's requesting has no roles. You guys have no roles, so we do not know your views at all. So please go to the Add Roles channel and just pick a few roles. That's all I need to say.
Okay. Well, and anyway, there aren't really a lot of. I mean, I don't know if you believe this, but I believe that there's not really a lot of other like choices for obtaining oil that much.
What are you talking?
Because
so we get most of our oil from Mexico and Canada. We get about 12% from the Middle East, and almost all of that comes from Saudi Arabia. And we have some of the largest oil reserves on the planet. We just don't use them in the case of like World War III. We keep them reserved.
And okay, but oil also, the other thing is that you say that there's not as many sources of oil globally. There have been more and more sources of oil for the United States in particular than like ever. The United States almost achieved energy independence because of fracking. You can frack for like incredible amounts of oil in the Midwest and whatever. I mean, the same thing inside of Canada, which is right next door, inside of like
But
to be-
whole
to be-
province of Alberta
fracking?
exploded with like fracking, you know. And
To
getting,
be
like,
fair,
But isn't
though-
fracking damaging to the surrounding environment, though?
Yeah,
Okay,
it is
sure.
very
No,
If
the
they're-
claims are
okay,
totally
but-
overblown. But to be fair,
okay,
against the fracking thing, it costs almost $80 a barrel to manufacture fracked oil, and Saudi
okay,
Arabia can
but-
drill oil for like $3 a barrel.
Yes,
So
but the strategic,
Just want to point out the debate is about Afghanistan, so if we can
Yeah.
change the
No,
topic.
no,
Yeah,
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 yes,
that's
yes,
fine.
Yeah,
yes.
maybe we
Could
should.
we let some new people in, because you guys been talking and it's actually kind of circular. You're talking about natural resources. You're not getting
Yeah,
to the
I
heart
agree.
of the issue.
All right,
We're
well,
kinda
it's the
echo
heart of the
chambering
No
here.
one,
situation,
no
then
one
bring
wants
it,
to
yeah.
talk about what is the moral of the story here. What did we learn about this?
I just
You
want to
guys are
say,
talking about it's bad. Hold on, I know you guys been talking a lot, but let somebody new come in and talk, and let's change the topic a little bit here.
I'm cycling some people out.
Okay.
So yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
really
I'm
think
gonna-
we learned anything. That's
I'm
I
gonna go
I
out-
mean, maybe we did.
Well,
Maybe we
let
didn't.
me enlighten you. Let me enlighten you a bit, because
Please do.
regardless if America came in there, Afghanistan was a problem prior to America invading it. No one talks about this, right?
Mhm.
So
What do you mean?
when the 9/11 event happened,
Let him finish.
you think Afghanistan all of a sudden just had this epiphany and wanted to attack us? No, they had other countries helping them. So let's look at what are the most richest, wealthiest Muslim Arab countries in the world today. Are they offering any support to Afghanistan? No, they're not. They're not. And so America coming in and trying to be the police and trying to modernize Afghanistan, you have to understand that even if Afghanistan was modernized and had military presence and was sophisticated and had technology, their ideology and the way they think allows for corruption to come in and replace whoever is in leadership.
Yeah.
So even if they were established, they would still be compromised and become corrupt because of their ideology and because of how they think. Like one gentleman said, we're not supposed to think that just because we think this way in America, other countries think this way in other countries. So they could be corrupt. So yes, we had a presence there, and they didn't like our presence there, even though we were trying to establish some sort of leadership and some sort of government. It would have been okay. Look, let me give you a hypothetical. Do you think that if the Taliban replaced those with Jews, do you think they would have invaded and conquered Afghanistan if those were Jews? Of course not.
No.
What? What are you
No.
talking about?
I'm
What?
saying that if a bunch of
What?
Jews,
If
if a bunch of
Jews.
Jews,
Okay,
started-
great. So we
Okay,
bring it back to
okay.
Israel.
I don't
let's
think
take it
if
one thing at a
Israel
time.
you would have all these
Okay,
Muslim
okay.
countries coming
So,
together trying to
Whoa,
stop
hold on,
United
what
not
the-
even
Guys,
this
calm
monkey.
down,
Let's
calm
let's
down.
address your
One
claims.
This is quite the brain
So,
fuck here. What the
let's
If
go for
Israel-
one of your claims that you said first here. Okay, because I found something interesting you said earlier, which is that you said, oh, well, just their mindset, they just can't have a stable government. Well, then why was it that before the 1976 coup d'etat, there was a 50-year stable monarchist government, well, relatively stable monarchist government inside of Afghanistan for like 50 years. Now, I'm not some like fucking monarchist or something, but what I'm saying is that the idea that Afghanistan is incapable of having, because their mind is just different. I mean, this is ridiculous, right?
Well, hold on. Do you think, Iran and all these Muslim countries are
You
stable?
laid out a bunch of
Please.
platitudes about, oh, what about our rich, like alluding to Saudi Arabia and this other stuff. It's like, yeah, I'm not pro Saudi Arabia either. I just don't know what your point is. You waffled on
Well,
about a bunch
my
of stuff
point is,
there, when you said you were gonna bring it
if
to
you
something
make a
interesting.
Muslim country wealthy, yes, it can be stable, but it's corrupt. That's my point.
What do
You
you
would
mean
have
it's corrupt?
corruption.
Corruption is
Wait.
everywhere.
Do you think all these rich, wealthy Muslim countries aren't corrupt?
Not atheist
Huh?
monkey. I want to ask you a question. Do you really not think if Israel had taken in Osama bin Laden after 9/11, do you really not think the United States would have invaded in a heartbeat?
They would have.
Why would
is-
Israel
my
take
point
in
that I'm trying to
Osama
get
bin
across
Laden
is,
then?
It's
if it was a bunch
hypothetical.
of Jews, if it was a group of Jews, a team of Jews, a big
Team of Jew. Okay,
assault
yeah.
of Jews coming in to take over Afghanistan, you would see all these Muslim countries banding together to stop this. But since they were other Muslim Arabs, they didn't do anything.
Oh, I got you. I misunderstood what you were saying.
They didn't do anything.
Also,
Right.
the
So
monarchy in
if it were Jews,
Afghanistan.
because it's a religious war. So if Jews were attacking Afghanistan, you would have seen other Muslim countries banding together. There would have been wealth and distribution and rockets and all these things trying to stop these guys from taking over Afghanistan. But since this is an ideological war, Muslims, the moderates, they don't do anything.
Well, yeah,
The radicals are what's driving everything. So you can have moderate Muslims, living in Afghanistan, but the extremists are the one that controls everything, and that's what you see in all these other Muslim countries. The extremists have everything; they're the richest, and it's peace, but there's so much corruption. This is what the future of Afghanistan is now: corruption.
I agree
You
with
can
you.
throw money at them, but it's just going to be corrupt.
Well, Afghanistan didn't even attack us. Almost all the hijackers on 9/11 came from Saudi Arabia. Just more to your point. I mean, it wasn't even Afghanistan just took in Osama bin Laden after the attacks, but it's not like he was from Afghanistan.
So this argument about like all these resources and there's oil there. It's not about that. It's about ideologies. You would have to completely wipe out the Sharia law and the way they think over there in order for you to change that. Because I can tell you what, if America was stationed in Afghanistan and there were a bunch of other Americans that were trying to live there, we would probably fight for that. We would have our constitution. We would defend that land. But since it's not the same ideology, they just hightail and run out of there. The president, he got out of there too. He's done. He took off. So there's really no hope for them because they need to change their ideologies.
All right.
Okay, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm actually Afghan myself. So I want to say, like, with the mindsets that you were saying, like, people, their ideology is different. That is true. Well, it's not really true. Like, to some degree it is. But the people there, all they want right now is just peace. So they don't really, like, I don't know how to say it, but, like, they don't really care about, they care about, like, what the Taliban might do to them in the future. So they can't do anything. All the people there, they're just living in fear right now. So it's kind of hard for them to fight back.
No,
yeah,
Mina,
well, what does the Taliban want?
He's saying that if Israel had attacked Afghanistan, all the other Muslim countries would have fought back with
yeah. I mean, because here's the thing, though. But he acts like this is some. You act like not a atheist, but you act like this is some kind of like mind-bending point. When it's like, yeah, for sure, like religion and nationality and ideology plays a role in how countries make geopolitical decisions, for sure, right? But I'll give you an example that kind of contradicts your point, which is that in 1998, the government of Iran almost actually invaded the Taliban government of Afghanistan. It very narrowly had to be avoided because they didn't have international support to do so, right? Because Iran is Shia. Okay, and yes, they're fairly like radical and religious in their law, but they're Shia, and the government of the Taliban is Sunni. Now I don't know if you know the distinction there, but those are two different branches of Islam that have not exactly gotten along well at various points inside the past and in the present, right? So to pretend that this is all some monolithic like entity is just like ridiculous and like just detached.
Well, I think his point is a fair one. That, like, Mina, what you're saying, I agree. I like the people of Afghanistan. It's really sad for them, but I think what he's saying is the other Muslim countries around them are not gonna fight back. Like Saudi Arabia is not gonna fight a fellow Sunni force, even if it's a terroristic one that's evil.
Saudi Arabia's ideology, in many ways, is a watered-down versions of the Taliban.
I mean, Wahhab is might not even be that watered down.
Sure. I just don't know.
You can see a good example of this. What was the was it the Taliban or who was it that was in Gaza and they were fighting the Jews? Israel.
That's Iran. That's the Iranians.
Yeah, but what was the terrorist group that was in Gaza?
The Gaza Strip, you mean Egypt or Palestine?
Hamas, right?
Yes.
So Hamas, like if you look at all the debates and all of the rhetoric about the Hamas versus the Jews, a lot of the supporters, not really supporting Hamas, but they're aligning themselves with them. They don't really. If you ask them, hey, yeah, Hamas is terrible, just try to debate them on this. Yeah, Hamas is terrible, but we want that land. We want that holy land. So they're completely mixed up. Hamas.
Never heard about Hamas. What is Hamas? Can you explain?
Yeah, so you guys understand the whole argument with the American troops leaving Gaza, and then Hamas, as soon as they left, they moved right in and took over Gaza, and they
What
started
is
firing
Hamas? I
rockets.
don't know what Hamas is.
There
What's
was
Hamas?
no. Hold on. There was never an American military occupation of Gaza. What are you talking about? Gaza, the Gaza Strip, is like an isolated portion of Palestine that borders Egypt, right, and in Israel.
Whoa, whoa.
It has nothing to do with America. I don't know why you're bringing up America. This betrays a deep
Sorry,
fundamental misunderstanding.
sorry,
of it.
I
Sorry.
misspoke.
Unless
I
you're like
misspoke.
completely okay.
I just
If
want
you
to point out
the,
that
Sorry, okay. If you misspoke, I apologize.
the
You said it very
Israeli army.
confidently.
Hold on, the Israeli army occupied Gaza. I misspoke. It wasn't the American
Okay,
army. It
I'm
was
sorry
the
then. I'm sorry.
Israeli army.
I don't even know what
The
Hamas is. What
Israeli
is
army
Hamas?
Just
occupied
Google
Gaza.
it. Google it, man. Come on. It's
I don't.
in Palestine.
I did, but I don't understand what they believe.
Well, let me lay
Hold
it
on
out
to
for
let
you.
him.
Let me lay it out for you. Let me lay it out. The Israeli army occupied Gaza, and as soon as there was peace and they wanted to retreat, the Israel army left Gaza and left it for the people there. The Hamas terrorist group moved right in as soon as they left and started firing rockets at the Israel dome, trying to take over and cause a war. Right. So a lot of people a lot of Muslims hate Hamas, but they don't mind siding with Hamas as long as the Jews are eradicated, as long as you can move them out of their holy land so that Muslims can come in and take over that land. Right. And this is what you see happening in Afghanistan. A lot of Muslim extremists are taking over Afghanistan, and the other Muslim countries are silent. Why? Because they're siding with them. And I believe they have their support of these other Muslim countries. This is my point.
This is I completely agree with what you said, and this is the very essential point of why uh, countries and people should not trust extremist organizations to come and take control for a goal that they all agree on. Because once they get in power, they are not going to be aiming for that goal. They have other goals in mind. Always the promises is something that you would agree on so that you could help me get in power. You've seen a similar thing in Egypt where the Muslim Brotherhood went into power. It was a play that was built over, I think, over 50 years of trying to get into power in Egypt, promising that they take the Christians out, they'd implement Islam correctly, Sharia law, and this and that. But once they got into power, and they started attacking the Muslims, saying that they're not real Muslims, that only those who join the Muslim Brotherhood are part of are the real Muslims. And then they started bombing mosques. That's when the Muslim population stopped supporting the Muslim Brotherhood and then turned against them through their other president, and then instated the one that's currently there. So I think this is just going to repeat again. I think the U.S. In Afghanistan had a pretty bad problem of trying to force the Afghani people to just do what they wanted them to do to try to help them. Not saying this properly. I think they were just trying to hold their hand or force them to do what was right instead of actually changing their ideology. You can't force someone to do something you want forever, because once you are gone, they'll just go back to what they were doing before. I think a similar thing is going to play out here. But I'm hoping for the best. But I feel like the Taliban takeover is going to be pretty bad for the area.
To be fair, I want to say, like, I agree with everything both of you just said completely, but I do want to make it clear that I recognize that as far as like individual innocent Muslim civilians, there are a ton getting totally screwed over who want nothing to do with the insanity. I mean, whether it's Afghanistan or Gaza, there are a lot of people being used as cannon fodder for religious extremist groups to get their way. So I don't want it to be construed as like carrying over to all the individual citizens. I'm talking about, I agree with you guys, but when it comes to these extremist groups that are moving through these countries. And I think a lot of this has to do with the way that we split up the Middle East after World War II. I mean, you had 5 years of, in essence, Nazi propaganda being streamed over the radios across the Middle East, and then we came in and split it with no concern for ethnic groups or natural barriers or anything. We just kind of made up borders and clumped groups of people together or separated groups of people, and I don't know what we could have expected after this crazy history.
If you're talking about Sykes-Picot with like how Syria in Iraq and these other countries were created. I mean, well, first of all, I was more after World War One, but that's more irrelevant. Whatever. And as to the point with the Nazi propaganda, I mean, I guess that's supposed it's relevant in like Palestine, but when we're talking about Afghanistan, we're talking about a very different region, a very different history. Like, I mean, again, it's like these very large generalizations. Like you're talking about a massive region, these very different countries, right? So I just don't see like the war in Afghanistan kind of more stems back to well two larger factors. One is like kind of the legacy of the Great Game and the significance of Afghanistan in like geostrategy in the region, right? Where it's been very important. This is why the British were invading it back in the 19th century, because like it was super important in proxying against Russia. And then the other main reason is because of the massive destabilization that Afghanistan suffered, combined with the rise of like Islamism in more like the 80s, gave like an opportunity for the Taliban to take root. So because the problem is that people will draw these connections to things that just aren't connected, and that's I don't know.
Well, I mean, you could keep going with you can include everything, all the funding to fight the Soviets, and it's an endless history. I'm just saying there's been a string of like unfortunate events, but it doesn't seem to apply to like the Middle Eastern countries in Southeast Asia, or there are plenty of Muslim countries that aren't imploding. So I do think there's something particular about that region and the history of just chaos and political instability in that region that's not like inherently religious.
Yeah, there's a variety of things. All right.
Yeah, I wanted to give one more thought, and I don't mean to generalize, but I think in this case, I think it's I think it's acceptable to generalize because we have a history that we can look at to determine if we can how we can move forward. So I think you would have to get rid of Sharia law and the Muslim ideology in order for us to move forward and to progress. You could look at just do a history research on a place called Lebanon. Lebanon was a Christian society. It had universities, and it was called I think one of the third wonder of the world or something like this on Time magazine. So it was a very civilized, intelligent place. And then Sharia law and the Muslim ideology moved in, and you can look at what Lebanon is today. It's not the same thing. So we would have to, this might sound crazy, but we would have to set up some government where these guys would have to renounce their religion because it's a primitive and it's a compromised religion where if you even try to debate Muslims today about what's in the Quran, there's contradictions. I can give you one right now. It says in the Quran, don't be friends with Jews or Christians. And then there's another one that says Christians are your closest friend. So it's a matter of interpretation. Whoever's the extremist is going to be the one that takes over. And yes, there is a country full of moderate, kind Muslims, but it only took 11 extremists to bring America to its knees, right? That's all it took was 11 of them. And so we can't move forward with these ideologies. We have to stop it because it's basically going to compromise all other countries with all these immigrations that are coming to Europe, right? All these, if you look at Michigan now, we have tons of Muslim ideologies going in there, and you ask them, oh, what's more important, the Constitution or Sharia law? Well, of course they're going to say Sharia law. So it's a primitive and it's a very dangerous religion that you guys should be aware of. Afghanistan fell because of an ideology, not because America moved in and tried to modernize it.
Okay, but the primary exporter of that ideology is not the Quran and it's not Islam, it's Saudi Arabia. The only country on the planet with Jews and Christians are dogs and pigs in their public textbooks for little kids is Saudi Arabia. Like the exporter of Wahhabi extremism. Now, obviously, Iran is playing its own game with extremism too, but this is one of our closest allies in the Middle East. I mean, we rely on Saudi Arabia for political stability as much as does exist in the Middle East, and we provide them with a ton of military aid. So, I don't know. You're suggesting that we like march in and like just brainwash everyone out of their religion? Like, what are you advocating?
I'm suggesting that we don't recognize these Muslim countries, right? Because they're Muslim and it's a dangerous religion. I would understand that All of these majority Muslim rich countries are corrupted. This is why they're not helping Afghanistan. This is why America is helping, because we believe in freedom.
All right, I'm gonna cycle out so someone else can go up and speak.
Okay. I'm gonna see if there's anybody.
Thank you for letting me talk, people.
Yeah. So set up a government, set up something so that we can have Arabs come in, renounce their religion. We don't want the Muslim faith in these new governments that we can help them establish.
Okay.
So
Wait,
I think.
can I
sorry.
speak for a second?
Sure.
Okay, so I think you're misinterpreting what Islamic ideologies are, because the extremists in Afghanistan right now, they're not going by the Quran. They're going by right. So they're wanting to
I disagree. The Taliban are moving in, and you know what they're doing? They're killing people and telling them that women can't go to school, right? Women should be wearing the hijab and not showing themselves. They're killing people because they're extremists and they're using Sharia law and the Muslim ideology. They're not just going in there and trying to kill people for no reason. They're killing people because of
No,
their
but
ideology.
where does it say that women can't get an education in any Islamic texture, or like where does it say that?
Well,
It's
exactly. It
literally
doesn't
Saudi
say
Arabia
anything. That's why they're
exporting those
pushing that.
ideas.
It's their like narrowed mindset of these extremists, and they're wanting to put these like fake laws on the people of Afghanistan.
Look, I'm arguing this as I go to a synagogue down the street, and I'm a Zionist, and I'm arguing it is not Islam. It is this is political, like ideological warfare.
Yeah,
but this
it's
is
not
two
political.
powers that are doing this.
Now,
Like-
cycling back,
Yeah.
I just want to,
Okay.
just because I wanted to cycle back to Afghanistan a little bit. Someone asked a question, and I want to get a little bit of your thoughts. This is in the Send Your Questions Here channel. They asked, do you think that the American intervention de-escalated or escalated the Middle East, not just Afghanistan? And should they have invaded because of an ideological difference? Anyone can answer.
So you go
It
first,
totally
Julie, 'cause you
escalated
started.
it, because from that, the Taliban, they didn't like the idea, so they wanted to take over Afghanistan again.
Okay.
I disagree.
I think maybe initially.
Sorry, I wanted to. I'm sorry, Betty. You go after me, but I wanted to say that I think that the invasion in 2001 definitely escalated things in the long run. I think at the time it deposed like a government that was pretty fucking awful. But that in the long run, yeah, it absolutely escalated things. Maybe it would have been less bad if they hadn't followed it up with invading Iraq, but I mean, we'll never know, right? So I would say that, yeah, it escalated things, and they probably should not have done it in retrospect.
Okay. Who was the other person who wanted to answer as well?
Yeah, I disagree. I think if you look at it from, I think it was from February of 2020 away till August of 2021, there was not one American that had died in Afghanistan under Trump's rule. And so I believe that they had established some sort of safe zone, some sort of government there, some sort of peace that Afghanistan could have played off on. But as soon as we started to pull out, that's when the aggression came.
The aggression was always going to be there. They were just waiting for the correct time to be aggressive. I don't think that's how that worked.
There were extremist groups trying to convince the individual citizens, the day-to-day citizens, that America and the West were the great Satans, and trying to convince them of this religious ideology. And then we came in and started like drone striking and black hawking people in the middle of the night. And people, I have very little faith that the next generation of people in Afghanistan will be more favorable towards the United States or the West than the previous one.
So it seems kind of like the best solution here was to put pressure on the countries that are exporting these dangerous extremist Muslim ideologies to actually fix the interpretations that are being exported out, right? Because the underlying issue here is that extremist interpretations of Quran get exported to these people. They integrate them into their lives. They look at everyone else as the enemy. They kind of support the extremists that are coming in to take power, and then everything is lost. Would that be the best solution in this area, in this problem?
I mean, we can't.
No.
Well, it seems like we can't. Saudi Arabia will play by our rules in terms of OPEC, so they're propagating horrible religious shit. But They're not selling oil to China, and every time we've let a lot of these countries stabilize, they'll start to export oil to China, and we want the geopolitical strategic position. I really believe that. I don't have like hardcore evidence, but it seems like that's the case. I don't know if we want it. I don't know if the United States actually desires a stable Middle East.
In truest sense, this boils down to interventionalism in a region for geopolitical stance, like for like a better geopolitical standing, is like what causes these problems. Because if Afghanistan and the rest of the Middle East were able to like self-govern and self-determine their own right as a nation, we probably there's a chance we might not even be seeing a Taliban. And in fact, because like the Taliban is a lot of reactionaries, a lot of the basis of their reactionary ideology stems from like European meddling in the last like century or so, and I think like staying out of there should have been the whole process the whole time. And like whatever path those people choose, whatever path those people choose. And the fact that US has been there for 20 years is what has led to the maintaining like support for the Taliban in the region. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, with in some regards, yeah, I'd say that the primary issue with the U.S. intervention against the Taliban, making it making them more popular, isn't so much in Afghanistan itself. It's more inside. It's more inside of the terms. If you look at who is like before the Americans invaded in 2001, the Taliban government was actually pretty goddamn isolated diplomatically, like to a pretty large extent. Like they had to rely on like opium exports and all this other and they were like not in a terribly great place. But now over like because of the American intervention over time, I mean China, Russia, even Iran, which before in like the 90s was going to like try to invade them, like these countries have warmed a little more because it's America against them now. And even like regional powers like India has been relatively neutral on the emergence of the Taliban government. So it's like Pan-Arab. I wasn't talking about Pan-Arabism, but go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just saying like that to me that just sounds like, I'm not saying you're endorsing that idea or anything. I'm saying what you're describing sounds like a version of Pan-Arabism, which like has been around well before.
I don't think China and Russia supporting like being okay with the Taliban taking power is Pan-Arabism.
No, I was talking about like
none of those people are Arabs. But sorry.
No, I was talking about when you were referencing like Pakistan and Iran and things like that.
But Iran, but neither of there's some Arabs either.
Yeah, Iran is not an Arab country.
There's not. I mean,
they're like the mortal enemies of Saudi Arabia.
I'm not saying they're like inherently Arab, but like what my point being is like the Middle East in itself, like uniting against imperial powers, is kind of, and like Afghanistan being part of like the Middle East, but also being Central Asian, like very interesting geographically. But I'm saying like they're uniting against like interventional powers and being anti-US is all recent history. Like like if the US hadn't invaded and stayed there for 20 years, probably wouldn't be seeing this geopolitical situation.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not pro-invasion.
Like Russia and China are trying to get up in there. I definitely think like U.S. interventionism in itself is causing this problem, and it cannot be solved unless like we stay there. But I also disagree with us staying there in the whole like and being there in the first place as well. So like I said, like this is just what's the saying? It's this is just like the comeuppance of like the U.S. being the U.S. And because of us, now people in Afghanistan are going to like suffer under a reactionary regime.
I mean, yeah, I agree. I think look at the United.
Before the invasion, yeah. Sorry.
You look at the United Arab Emirates. I mean, look at Vietnam after we left Vietnam. I think we should pick countries that are willing to play nice, and we should trade and do our best to enrich them. And because I mean, honestly, it just seems like building wealth pulls minds much better than bombing people. It just doesn't seem to work to make a. We just kind of created a united enemy for a lot of different groups in the region.
For sure.
Exactly. I think the best thing. Oh, sorry,
yeah, you go. Maybe let's. You go first.
I was just gonna say, like, I think the debate kind of ends where it started. It's like the U.S. should pull out, should not come back, and let the people of Afghanistan decide their own fate, because they have a right to do that, and they don't need us all up in their shit. Because I guarantee the support for the Taliban would not be so great had the Afghanistan government from before, even before the Soviets got involved. If nobody fucked with Afghanistan, we would see a very different Afghanistan. But it's constantly being fucked with, and that's why we see reactionary forces getting support from swaths of people, because when it comes down to it, their national identity is also being fucked with, and that is a whole culture thing that they're falling back on and joining in a sense to at least hold on to some semblance of their national identity, that being maybe reactionary Islam, reactionary beliefs, and women's oppression kind of shit. It's unfortunate, it is, but it is the reality we have to deal with.
Hey Mina, being the Afghani in the chat, do you agree with that sentiment? Do you think that that's the right way to think about this?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think since all these different countries have put their hands on Afghanistan, they haven't let the people really decide for themselves, and all these different groups have come up trying to take over Afghanistan and trying to make it different, and the citizens are just sick of it. So I think they need to decide for themselves on what kind of government they want.
Exactly.
What about the Sokolov guy? Didn't you want to say something before Light
Yeah, I guess now moving on. What do you think should America do and the allies? What should they do in the future?
What do you mean?
Stay the fuck out of people's business.
Yeah, I think they should just let just see what happens in the future, what the Taliban will do with the government and with just the country as a whole. And I mean, if their ideas of if they oppress people, or if they don't let people get an education, then I think at that point other countries should step up and say something.
I think we need to stop. I think we need to cut ties with Saudi Arabia, even if it destroys the oil markets. I think unless they stop exporting religious extremism and creating these pocket terrorist groups, we should not be allied with them at all.
For sure, I think okay, the self-determination is super important, and I think that it's one of those things. U.S. is there. I forgot what I was gonna say. Never mind.
Okay. I mean, in terms of intervention in Afghanistan, I mean, obviously from the Americans, pretty much any future thing in the near future, unless some seismic shift occurs in the world, seems extremely untenable. Given that when the Taliban come in, I mean, already it really seems like they're just gonna have not really any regional opposition. So they're gonna kind of have some free reign once the U.S. is out of there fully. So, but in general, for in the future, I mean, I don't know, I'm not, I think that a lot of people are knee-jerk, completely anti-interventionist, in all circumstances, but no, I mean, there can be circumstances where intervention is fine, but it just has to be extremely carefully done. And has to have clear goals from the beginning, which Afghanistan, the goals shifted.
I'm 100% anti-interventionism myself.
Okay.
No, I think that the only situation that the U.S. can go back into Afghanistan right now is if the citizens specifically request the U.S.'s help, or the aid of another country to help them. I think forced re-entry a couple of days after leaving is just going to bolster the propaganda that the Taliban is probably spreading over there. So I think the U.S. dropped the ball because they didn't have clear goals in mind when they were trying to quote unquote help or assist Afghanistan when they were there initially. I think they've dropped the ball. I think they could have been in and out in 10 years with good help and good support for the government if they had just coordinated a little bit better. But that's no point talking about that right now. Again, the only situation that they can go in acceptably is if the people there ask for their help, and I think then they should have some clear goals in mind and should go in and execute the goals instead of just lingering around for another 20 years.
Well, I think that if in this hypothetical, if the Afghanistan people want help, I don't think U.S. should intervene, but a coalition of like surrounding countries and like who have similar cultural ties and things like that should intervene because they would have a better grasp of Afghani culture than like any U.S.
But what if the
Ideally,
Afghani
yes.
people don't want the intervention from the regional people? What if they want it specifically from the U.S.?
I
And-
don't find that likely.
Oh, no, it's hypothetical. So
I think most importantly, what if these countries want to help but don't have the resources to help?
yeah, that too. Or don't want to.
Because
I
it would
mean-
make sense. What you're saying is correct. Help should come from people with similar ideas, because it makes the help and the attempt to change one's thoughts into something better a little easier when it comes from someone that's kind of like you, instead of coming from a foreign power that you kind of have a bad history with. But a lot of these countries don't have the resources, or they might already be spread out thin, trying to defend or do whatever in their own countries to be able to help. So I think the best thing to do is coordinate between the countries and the countries with the power. In this case, the U.S. I think that would be the best way to do it. You know.
But how are we supposed to ally with Saudi Arabia and support Saudi Arabia, keep, accidentally, quote unquote, accidentally funding ISIS, fight Assad, and fight the Taliban? Like, we have all these conflicting positions. It's like American money fighting American money all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, Syria would have been one of the prime places to possibly stabilize that region. But I don't think the U.S. should intervene on its own. If anything, the UN should set some form of like operation up. That way, like it's not just the U.S. It could be it'll be a coalition funded worldwide.
Do you think if America tried to go back, would other countries follow? Because I would think I'm Australian, and Australia fought with the US and also other countries. I don't think they would go back. They will be quite hesitant to go back because we did waste quite a bit of resources. We did have to invest in some resources and stuff like that. So, what do you think?
Yeah, no,
I
they
honestly
would
say
not.
the U.S. won't go.
Coalition partners would not go back in. I mean that was another issue with the invasion continuing on, was that like what started as a pretty large multinational coalition, at least like most of the NATO countries, was like slowly dwindling over time. So like for example, Canada left the Afghanistan intervention, I believe 2015-14. I might be incorrect there, but it was some point in the mid 2010s, I'm pretty sure. So like and a lot of the problems with that is that like now it increasingly gets to a situation where you can just have like a change of government in the US and it can just totally change the policy of the intervention, so it just becomes more untenable. So like if the US decided immediately like, oh, we're actually just gonna go invade back in, there would not be much support from its multilateral partners, I don't think.
I don't think you'd find a lot of support in the American people for a return to that intervention. I think there would be like massive unrest in the United States if there was a return after finally pulling out after 20 odd years.
And when we did finally find Osama bin Laden, which was supposedly the reason from the get-go, he was in Pakistan, not in Afghanistan.
It'll be fun.
Huh?
Do the
Light
mods have any
Brigade?
specific questions
Yeah.
that want to be answered?
Send your question. There's one right there. Someone said, from what I can tell, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys think Muslim ideology and religion is a dangerous.
That was that one guy who's now not here.
It's not that it's dangerous. It's that there's a lot of conflicting things that can be conflicting ideas that can be extrapolated from the text. I think the big problem here is that some of these dangerous interpretations are being supported by countries like Saudi Arabia and by countries like Egypt. Egypt houses the Azhar, which is the primary source, the primary reference or the institution that primarily interprets everything and spreads it out. So I think worse than Saudi Arabia is Egypt, because that place has created a lot of extremist preachers that were later supported by Saudi Arabia and given television programs back when TV was the big thing, and that helped spread the extremist ideology quite a bit, especially in Egypt. I know there was a similar effect in the Arab world, but whoever tuned into these channels was, getting a whole bunch of crap.
Well,
I mean, the problem
the
is.
thing is. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you go to the text of any of these religions, you can extrapolate the same argument, but it seems like the defining line between like the Crusades and Christian violence, or any religion and violence, is theocracy, or is the religion separated from state. It seems like as soon as these religions get separated from governance, they calm down significantly. So I think the problem is you still have a lot of theocracy in the Middle East, and I don't know. But I don't think the issue is the religion itself or people's personal religious beliefs. I think it's government policy and ideology.
Yeah, I think you can see both sides of that in like Saudi Arabia versus like Egypt under Kwame Nkrumah. Like you see two like Muslim leaderships, but both differing vastly in how they handle their people and governments. I wouldn't consider Egypt under Kwame Nkrumah to be violent or dangerous by any means.
Kwame Nkrumah was in Ghana. I don't know what you're talking.
No, he was the Egyptian leader. Who am I thinking of? Yeah, I can't think of.
You mean Nasser?
Yeah, Nasser. No,
Okay.
wait. Probably Nasser.
I mean, he was like the kill all the Jews guy.
Yeah, I'm thinking of somebody else. But my point is there was a time in Egypt where it was like a secular state that was inherently not violent.
Are you sure you're talking about Abdel Nasser, not Anwar Sadat?
I think it's Sadet is who I'm thinking of. There's a lot of names that I'm, as a Southern American, I'm not capable of remembering correctly or pronouncing.
Yeah, so Sadat is the president that actually, I'm not sure, I think he was fighting the English at the time, but he gave, in order to help his goal, he gave power to the yet minority of Muslim Brotherhood. He took the people out of jail and put them back on the streets to help him. But it later backfired, and they ended up killing him when he tried to take back his support. So that was that guy.
The unfortunate round of circumstances.
Oh, another question in the send your questions. Will terrorism return to Afghanistan now that the Taliban has returned to power? I mean, well, that's an interesting question. If there will be the same kind of foreign terrorism sponsored, but in terms of like that, like the Taliban's government in Afghanistan is like horrific. Their policies are horrific. It's absolutely like they're like terrible. Like I mean, like I mean, there's the obvious stuff with like women's rights and like their insane stuff with like banning like photography and like but also they the extreme ethnic and religious minority discrimination, like all this other stuff, and persecution. Just really, it'll be really awful. Yeah.
You didn't realize that photography was immodest and of the devil?
Well, I mean, of course.
And that's just factual.
Dude, I bet you this guy watches sports too and listens to music.
But I don't. But as for like international terrorism, I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that the Taliban are like supportive of ISIS. Are they? I'm not. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, we'll see going forward, but I mean, the United States also has continuously accidentally given money to ISIS since their formation. But the Taliban in Afghanistan weren't a part of the foreign terrorist attacks, but they took the 9/11 plotters in and kind of housed them. Like that was what the original thing was. But I don't know if we've really had foreign terrorist attacks like originating or planning from Afghanistan. I mean, someone correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, everyone knows about 9/11, but there was also attacks on embassies in the late 90s that I do believe that that like not the Taliban directly, but I believe like Bin Laden, who was like being like supplanted and whatever by the Taliban. I mean, that claim wasn't like completely wrong. He was eventually found in Pakistan, but like there was some, like support from Afghanistan, whatever, and like sponsoring. I mean, that's why they refused to give him up under like saying, oh, he's allowed hospitality here. But he not only with 9/11, but also like bombings of like U.S. embassies in like African countries and stuff. So like this was a thing that they like were okay with and fine with. Like, yeah. It's just the question if the political environment is the same now.
I mean, it's going to be a lot worse. Like Iraq is, we completely destabilized and just did
Yeah, for sure. I just mean in terms of like tactics for the Taliban, like if they'll decide to just like if that will be is what they want to do now as opposed to like the 90s. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that ideologically they've like changed or whatever. I'm saying that perhaps tactically they'll figure it's best not to provoke and they just want to consolidate control for now.
I think if it was a conflict with like China or Russia or like a secular state, then you could like militarily, pardon the expression, for lack of a better term, like put the fear of God into them militarily and prevent another attack. But I think when you have religious ideology undergirding the hatred, then it's much easier to get people to do things that would otherwise be basically suicidal. I don't know if it's gonna work to say like, oh, we just came through and really killed a lot of you, so now be scared and behave yourself. I just don't know if that's gonna work with a religious fervor thing.
I wonder. I guess my wonderance is like how the U.S. occupation has changed the views of the majority of the Afghan people. Like maybe like I don't know how to word this correctly, but like obviously the Afghani people were not huge fans of the occupation, but putting like face to enemy tends to like de-villainize, even if it's like soldiers. Like I have friends who serve in Afghanistan throughout the last 20 years, and they talk about good interactions with Afghanis, and so I would be interested in seeing how attitude towards the U.S. by the large majority of Afghani people, regardless if the Taliban are in power or not, has changed.
That sounds like a question for Mina, if you'd like to take it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm like Afghan American, so I don't really want to speak for like the whole majority of Afghanistan, but I want to say that the people, they weren't completely against the invasion. I mean, all they wanted was just for the US to help them to like stop the bombings and the killings. So they don't completely hate like US forces and like their invasions and stuff. So I mean, I guess their idea of the US has changed in some way because you know how like they currently left Afghanistan, like the soldiers they're coming out. So I guess it changed for the worse because the people I guess they were like trying to like they wanted help from them, and like the US kind of failed them and other countries failed them, and that's why the Taliban had the power to take control.
Hey, Mina, do you think it would have been, just your personal opinion, not speaking for any other like larger group, but do you think it would have been better if the United States had never gone, or what do you think could have gone better in terms of United States behavior?
Well, I think the main root of main root of the problems of Afghanistan, like all these extremists and groups coming up, is because of Russia and how they invaded at first. So I think if Russia didn't invade, then all these different problems and like inside of Afghanistan, there's like way too many problems to actually handle and like pick out one by one. So if Russia didn't invade at first, then the US wouldn't have invaded either. If besides like 9/11, yeah, they had to invade and they had to go in and find
Just as a
Osama
point
bin
of,
Laden.
just as a point of reference, the Soviet invasion was sanctioned by the Afghan government at the time.
Oh, we want to get into the Soviet invasion. Oh boy.
It was.
I
That's
mean,
factual. I'm not saying it was correct. I'm not saying it was a good thing. I'm just
Well,
saying
that doesn't mean it was supported by the people either.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
I'm
never
not even saying that.
supported by the people.
I'm not.
I
I'm not
mean,
even
the
saying that.
Afghan government, they were basically like during that time, they were basically puppets of the Soviet Union.
Well, I mean, I'm familiar with the interactions between the Afghan government and the Soviet Union. I'm just saying, in the difference between the two invasions, one was like asked for at least by the controlling party.
All right, guys, I'm gonna head out.
All right.
Thanks for having me. Sorry if I wasn't very succinct. It's my first time doing something like
It's
this.
okay. You're fine. All right. Oh, the Soviet one. I mean, I don't know as much about the specific lead up. All I do know about the Soviet intervention is that it was like absolutely brutal, like in terms of like the like civilian casualties, and like the consequences that it had. It was very, very, very brutal.
Yeah, I'm not educated enough in the Soviet, like the lead up to. I just know that the people were completely against it because of what they were doing to them. So they were just like, it was a bunch of rockets and bombs and just like so many horrible actions being done to the citizens. So like they had no say in it because the government were puppets of the Soviet Union. So the citizens, they couldn't do anything either.
Yeah.
No, like I said, for sure, I'm not saying I wholeheartedly agree with the Soviet intervention. I'm just saying that the invasions are like just a little different, and that was the only thing I wanted to put in.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Well, Anti-Federalist, are you gonna say something?
I was just gonna say I do wonder how this would have looked if we had spent the last 20 years trying to really open up trade with any like functional corporation we could have found, or really just try to like create ties economically instead of militarily. And I wonder that for a lot of these kind of failed states. I mean, even with the Taliban in control, like it seems like in a lot of areas of the world, if we open up trade and people start getting rich, potentially even like a party like the Taliban could end up moderating just because they end up wanting to protect their own wealth as they get richer, and free trade opens up. So that's my.
I mean, that was the whole thesis about China, right? That like the market turn would like lead to a growing middle class, which would push for social reforms. I mean, the success. I just feel like it depends on the circumstances. Stuff like that can happen broadly over the course of history. That happens, but it depends, I guess. You know.
I think I was, there was that like rockumentary film that Netflix did with Brad Pitt called like The War Machine, I think, and it was about Afghanistan, and I think they mentioned somewhere that like there's U.S. policy that United States funds can't go to like specific markets in a country that is receiving funds if the U.S. has like a lion share of said market. Not like I'm not saying I'm recalling correctly, but I'm pretty sure that might be it, and that might be the reason for the lack of industrialization while the U.S. was there for the last 20 years. Because realistically, 20 years to industrialize a country is like in a modern sense is entirely possible.
I mean, if you're like for like in terms of like economic prosperity, like over the course of like if you look at, I'm gonna put it in stage chat, but like if you look at like stuff like the like GDP per capita or whatever, I mean it doubled over the course of the American like time there. I mean, I don't think that like it wasn't entirely like that they were just incapable of building anything. I mean, there was a fair bit of there's a fair bit of infrastructure building and stuff like that. The problem was like the wider context within which it fit, where like it's like how do you kind of like just try to propel not even so much like industrialization, but like corruption, for example. Like corruption was a massive issue with the dispersion of funds from like the Americans towards like groups and whatever. Like if you send like if you distribute like $1 billion, but then like 300 million dollars of it is lost in like corruption and pocketed by various people. I mean, it just makes it very hard to like do kind of economic development stuff like that.
Well, I don't even mean aid. I mean specifically trade. Like, if the focus had been propping up anyone who is trying to create industry in the country versus trying to hold down a military presence. And that could have been, I mean, maybe we would have just enriched people and they would have funded terrorism or something. You know, it's not like, I'm not saying I know, but it seems like the difference between the United Arab Emirates and like, you know, Lebanon or is crazy. I mean, it seems like they'll be our friends because they got rich, you know.
Well, let's see what another question is. That's not really pertaining to Afghanistan.
For the Black Theft 2552 question, yeah, where he's like, do you think the U.S. will be back in Afghanistan? What would the nuke tipping point be to go back like in 01? I don't think that the U.S. will be able to re-intervene in Afghanistan like anytime soon. I don't even think that's like conceivable because of like just the not even so much like the diplomatic station position domestically, but I just don't think that there'll be a position internationally where the U.S. would be able to without risking a massive escalation with China and Russia and like regional authorities like that. So I just don't think they'll be able to.
I don't think we could survive it economically either. I mean, if anyone, I mean, anyone can Google like M1 money stock, M2 money stock, anything relative to like asset inflation. I mean, this was such a tremendous amount of COVID particularly. Like with COVID going on, I just don't think we can afford it. This has been a tremendous blow to the economy.
I think the economy's propped up on like balsa wood right now, and it's like a sneeze away from crashing. I don't think an Afghanistan intervention is even close to in the realm of possibility.
I don't know. I kind of think the inflation thing's a bit of a meme, but I don't know. It's whatever. It's
I'm not even talking
a different subject. Because he kind of brought up the money stock and whatever, but yeah.
I'm not even talking about the inflation. I just like in my everyday life, I just eat like we're talking what, like 68% of like, the American populace is like paycheck to paycheck, like, and then 6 million people are about to get evicted. Like,
okay,
it's on balsa wood.
Well, that's shifting into economic stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just trying to think of what other aspects of Afghanistan that could even be talked about.
The next question is, I would like to know everyone's opinion on if we should decrease the defense spending budget or not. It's not really Afghanistan related. What are your thoughts on the issues and flaws plaguing the Afghanistan army towards the start of the year and on the grounds of which the U.S. made ceasefire the current? That's so many questions.
I mean, has anyone actually seen the videos of us trying to train and equip the Afghanistan army or really any kind of training? I mean, from every video I've seen from everyone I know who actually was deployed over there, it doesn't seem like the people that we were trying to train wanted to take on the responsibility of what we were training them for.
No, I completely agree. 300,000 Afghani fighters put up no fight against a smaller force.
Yeah, I like agree with you on that because the money that was being funded for the training and all of that, the government that was there before, they took that money and different government officials took that and they put it in their own pocket. So nothing was going to the soldiers, nothing was being funded for them to actually train and be like healthy. And since the soldiers, like, they couldn't fight back now because they weren't trained well and they were trying to protect themselves. They were trying to feed themselves because they had absolutely no money that was being given to them.
Yeah, and how much money do you think is in the now former president of Afghanistan's blind trust in Little London? He'll be sitting on an island with the next Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, I mean the Afghan government, the one that was just there, the Taliban ousted, they had a practice of having child sex slaves, and we supported that and we funded them. That's a real thing.
Yeah,
So you
there's
look
just
at the
like so
Afghan.
many. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Actually, generally, yeah, you can go.
Okay. There's just like so many different government officials and just random people. Well, not really random, but the people in the government, they take the money and they use it for themselves. So they steal the money for from the people.
From my
That's right.
understanding, there was the Taliban and the government were trying to establish like a transitionary government, and when the president left, it's why we're seeing like this an absolute clusterfuck right now.
I'm not saying that this would be ethical at all or that we could do this or anything, but I'm just curious. I've asked this question to a couple of people who have family from Afghanistan or connections, but if, let's say in a hypothetical universe, we could have just gone in and said Afghanistan is now the 51st state of the United States and just moved in forever, do you think the people of Afghanistan would be better off for it or worse?
It would definitely benefit the people, but it would not benefit America as a whole.
Yeah, I mean that's obvious.
Yeah, I think it would benefit
It's
the
like
people
trying
because
to annex Chicago.
yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think the people, to some degree, they would have been happy. They would have been, satisfied because they would have had peace. Or, well, the U.S., if it was going to be the 51st state, then they would have, protected Afghanistan, and they would have
had peace. What I would say is they would have definitely done better, be better economically, and they would be a little more peaceful. But overall, I think it's like if Denmark were to annex Southside Chicago.
No, of course. I'm
Which is
not
not
saying it's
doable.
within the realm of possibility. I just in an alternative universe, I'm wondering. I've been curious what people thought about.
I think the real problem is that when you look at Afghanistan, you look at America, you look at a lot of these countries across the world, we've got different cultures. That's just how people are. And this idea that, and this kind of goes back as to why, nation building in general, this idea that we can install liberal democracy in a place like Afghanistan, their people, their culture doesn't support ideas like liberal democracy. They want the
I was about to say
not super popular. I don't think they're super popular there, but they're not like this super unpopular force, right? Like they have support. A lot of people are laying down their arms when the Taliban comes marching in because they're like, well, they'll be better than our government. They're not for liberal democracy. They never were. The Taliban, hey, they might do some terrible things, but if that's what the people of Afghanistan desire, that's what they want.
Yeah, I was going to say something on that. So the culture and like religion and everything like that is completely different. So if US tried to, put Western ideologies onto Afghanistan, some people might agree, but most people won't because it's like two different worlds, but there's still educated and, young people there that want to see a better Afghanistan. So if the US did come and try to make it like a state, I think people would be happy with like the security that they might, give Afghanistan. But then like the ideologies and like the cultures and just like changing all of that will probably ruin it again to like somehow.
That makes sense. And sorry, go ahead.
I was saying I don't even think you have to like look in that much of a speculation. Like Native Hawaiians aren't super happy with being a part of the United States. Puerto Ricans are not super happy with being even their like distant cousin, like kind of United States. U.S. Virgin Islands. The Philippines weren't happy until they got their freedom. I don't think you have to look very far for examples of like, well, that would not be a good thing.
Sure, no, in practicality, I agree. I don't think it would be a good idea. I mean, I think we did that with Iran. We installed the Shah, and as far as I know from polling data, Iran still has like the youngest, most pro-West like population in the Middle East, and they have like the worst government. I mean, we caused such a reaction in Iran that they ended up with like the most extreme government, arguably, in relation to Saudi Arabia. But like obviously it didn't work. But I've been curious to ask people for their perspectives on it. It's been an interesting question for me.
I mean, usually people who are like, they're like, oh, that'd be totally fine. like to add Afghanistan as the 51st state, they'd be like that no big deal or anything like that, or they'd be fine?
Well, yeah.
Like,
What have people been saying about that?
because I feel like most people are like, no, like that's just like ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
I mean, like Afghans want their independence. They want to be their own country and, just be safe at the same time. So,
yeah, exactly. And actually, someone just mentioned me. It was IDKR. They said, I don't understand why bringing their people in. I don't know if he's talking about refugees, but I don't know if y'all have talked about that. But now with Afghanistan, we're going to see a lot of these people. Some people on the left and right are saying there's the people of the Afghan government, State Department, like the health State Department, the military. We should bring them over here. We should, expedite the immigration process and take in all the refugees. Do you guys think we should take in a lot of refugees from Afghanistan now?
Yes.
yes, I think so. The people who want to come here and like they think that their lives might be in danger if they want to come, they should be allowed to come.
Okay.
Is it America's moral obligation to accept all refugees from around the world?
Of course not.
Sorry, from around the world, or is that
well, specifically, even in Afghanistan, of course, it's not our responsibility. And I think for the vast majority
in Afghanistan,
of those,
I think you can make a pretty good argument that there's a moral incumbency on.
No, I don't think so at all. I mean,
Why?
a lot of these people. Yeah, let me explain.
You intervene for 20 years, you're massively militarily, socially, and economically superior in like all these ways, and then like you're just not going to accept people in. Like, why? It just
Well,
really
listen.
let's
I'm opposed to that intervention in the first place when it comes to those troop deployments.
So
I don't think. Well, yeah, it's happened, sure, whatever.
So,
but this idea that we need to now detriment our own nation and bring it.
How's it a detriment?
How would that? Yeah, how would that detriment our own nation?
Well, I mean, you look at Europe. They brought in all these Afghanistan refugees, and you see huge hotbeds of crime start to form. You got grooming gangs that happen. So there's that risk of crime that comes with Afghan refugees. Okay. There's not going to be and if you want to let in refugees, a lot of the proponents will say, since they're about to die now, we should let them in now. That totally, walks away from the vetting process we have. So there's a very realistic chance, you have terrorists coming in pretending to be these refugees. Really, they're vetting this quickly?
Yes.
Cuomo.
It's part of why there are 6,000 American troops still in Kabul. They're vetting all of the people who are stuck at Kabul.
So how long will this vetting take? I don't
know the specifics of the process, but I know that they're doing it.
The grooming.
How long do you need? You do a background check. A lot of these people that they're bringing in were people that were directly associated with the American efforts to counter the Taliban. So you're talking about people who already have worked with the Americans or whatever. People who presumably they have documentation on.
Also, the Taliban is just going to slaughter hundreds of thousands of Afghanistan people for no reason, right? They're only really targeting the senior government officials.
Yes, they are. Anyone who worked with us is dead over there if they get left over there. We own NATO. We could send them all over the place. The hotbeds of crime in Europe are not Afghanis. They're Northern Africans. We know where the immigration is coming from, where we have issues in Sweden and Norway. But also, I do think the United States is evil if we don't take Kurds that are in the same situation after we let ISIS run roughshod over Iraq.
I mean, with the Kurds, you've got. Are you talking about when Trump decided to let Turkey go on in Syria? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm saying in general, we intervene in places, we destroy any stability that might have been there for whatever little bit there is. We have the ability to tell every other Western country we're all going to share this immigration wave. And every country would have to do it because we own their defense. We are NATO, basically, in terms of funding. But instead, we go in and we destabilize and we just leave these people. It's one thing to say, I'm not saying we need to import the entire country of Afghanistan, but the people that were working directly with us are dead. And we did the same thing in Iraq. Saddam was definitely not good for the Kurds, but we destroyed the country, moved ISIS in, and then we just left the Kurds that were working most closely with us in there. And I mean, look at what happened there. Thank God they've been able to fight back, but it doesn't look like the Afghanistan people are in the same boat. It doesn't look like they're going to be able to put up.
I feel like there's an issue here because there's a distinction between the people who have helped our government and then people who are fleeing the political instability that is now in Afghanistan. Right? That's not all of these hundreds of thousands of people help the United States government. I mean, that's just true.
Let's be clear. The people that they're letting in right now, that are being airlifted over, are the ones who have helped. Those
Right,
are the people
but that's not really the folks. I'm talking about
but
these
if we're talking about
refugees.
people,
No, that's what
yes,
I'm talking about, not those like
so
SIVs. Yes.
with those people in general, yeah, I mean, I suppose it could get a little more complicated on what the vetting process would be. But presumably these people will file through in a way that's similar in some ways to the Syrian refugee crisis. Now, presumably we don't want to create the same externalities of that, so presumably you would want to have like maybe some kind of international like safe harbor nearby, right? Like kind of like equivalent to like UN like refugee camps in like Lebanon and stuff like that, right? To stem a flow of refugees. But like if people eventually or like make their way over like to the US through like processes like that and want to go through legal processes, then like what's the problem? Like
Well, because when you have you let an extraordinary amount of refugees, what it can do is one, there's that issue of crime, and second is they drain public benefits at a far higher rate than Native Americans, right? That's just how it is. They need to because like they're generally, I mean, no offense, right, but they're generally unskilled people who don't have a college education, nothing like that. So they're not going to get the best paying jobs. So they're going to drain these public resources from the government, which we already have a finite amount of. So I think we should take care of Americans first before we take care
I'm
of
sorry. What?
refugees from
Most of the
Afghanistan.
people trying to get in right now are in Kabul, who are part of forming the government that we funded. This is people who are helping us try to build a new government, who the Taliban are going to execute. They are educated. This is the capital. I mean, these are the
Okay, so if we're
metropolitans
talking
of
about those
Afghanistan.
people, then we're talking about the kleptocrats that the United States funded, the corrupt people who were involved in child sex abuse.
one warlord guy. Come on, I've seen a million.
That was
people
not
meme the shit out
one
of it
guy.
today.
That was not one guy.
The guy that everyone talks about was one warlord, and there are tribes and various people. Of course, I mean I'm not whatever, but like you're trying to claim that like all of these people that are coming in are like pedophiles and all this whatever.
Yeah, and another issue is when we let in these Afghan refugees in 10 years, they're going to complain that the white supremacy in America is worse to live under than the Taliban, right?
Yeah, sure they are. I think I've
Yeah,
seen
No.
this. Like,
yeah,
I think
they-
I've
I'm
seen
sorry,
this
but
statement verbatim,
Yeah, they
like
are.
online.
No,
I don't know where you're
that's
reading
exactly
what
what's
thread you're
gonna
reading this
happen.
off of. Then why
No,
the
but
fuck
how
do
do
they
you
wanna
know
come
that?
here?
Honestly, there is a
Like-
chance that the Afghans can become red, can vote
Okay.
red.
Can
No,
It
I mean,
depends
I
on
think
how the
you're
Republican
like
Party goes about their policy, because Afghans tend, especially people from Afghanistan, tend to be more conservative,
right.
socially conservative.
Well, here's the thing though about and this is sort
If
of a
America,
yeah. Go
if the
ahead.
Republican Party were to take a more of a pro-immigration platform and not be so against immigration, and not be Islamophobic, then I think that honestly, Trump did say things in 2016 that turned off a lot of Muslims from voting
I
for
mean,
him.
American Muslims.
Well, no. But here, very quickly.
Like the
Here's the
2000s.
thing about that. This idea that because here's the immigrants, especially the first generation that come in, are very socially conservative. They don't agree with us on things like hate speech laws and Second Amendment, but things on like gay rights, abortion, those sorts of things are all with us. But this idea that we need to cater on immigration to appeal to them, that's not necessarily true. And I think that's disproven by how Trump did in 2020. I'm not saying Trump won, minorities did great, but the fact that he never even caved on immigration, knowing who he was, and he still managed to do well with Latinos
The reason
and
why
the
Trump
black
did
population.
Trump did better than Mitt Romney on and John McCain on immigrants is because Trump didn't run against Obama.
So you're saying they voted for the Republic? They didn't vote for the Republican. They voted for Trump more because he just wasn't Obama. Because Trump is even I guess Obama deported a lot of illegal aliens, but I don't think
Obama is extremely easy to run. He's probably the easiest candidate you could possibly run if you're
To
a Democrat.
clarify, that it's not illegal. Most of them are not quote unquote illegal. Undocumented is the verbiage, but most people come to the United States very legally by claiming asylum.
Also, another thing to note is the people who vote aren't illegal or even legal immigrants. They have become citizens and they're here for a long time.
The actual reason we need to take in immigrants, and every economist agrees with this, is because our population pyramid is upside down. We have way too many people retiring versus new people in the workforce. Americans don't have enough kids. You're talking about this from a conservative perspective, but the Muslims from Afghanistan can form families and make babies. It's our country that can't. So how's your conservative perspective they're going to ruin our culture? Their culture is successful and we're committing suicide with our birth rate. So maybe we should take something from them.
Their culture's so successful that their country just
in
fell
terms
apart.
of
Yeah,
demographics, like our problem is young laborers for the number of retirees we have. That is our economic problem right now. We have a demographic problem.
Right. Not to get into a broader debate about like social norms and like how our society is, but that largely is due to the advent of things like liberalism, which have empowered women and empowered the LGBT movement, which has led to a decrease in the birth rate. But let's talk more about.
Sure, but do you know who would probably fight back against those liberal family ideas? Muslims from Afghanistan.
Do you not know how immigrants' kids act? Because they're definitely not like their parents. If you know a
I would
thing
really
about
like to
immigrants.
clarify something. You're a conservative, correct?
Yes.
Okay, you are also a liberal in the sense of the political terminology. Let's not.
The lefty memes, okay.
It's not a lefty meme. Rousseau is literally the foundation of American conservatism.
The only liberals in the United States are libertarians. Everyone else is not really a liberal.
If we're talking about in the American like political spectrum, I mean, we know what the terms conservative and liberal.
I guess, but like it's still kind of weird because like 95% of the platform is the exact same on both sides of the aisle.
No, it's not really.
It totally is on everything that matters.
We're talking
not really.
Three major issues. There's like three major issues that separate conservatives and liberals.
Okay.
Well, okay. Listen, I mean, if you really think that the left, I'm going to assume you're a leftist. If you think that the left is actually any threat to the status quo, you're like on some medication because they definitely do not.
I'm not even.
Well, right. But this idea of the uniparty, because you say the right and left are like basically the same. The uniparty is not united in their contempt for like leftism or like like far left politics or whatever. They're more united in their I guess allegiance to the globalist American empire and like things like intervention, social progressivism, those sorts of things, not in opposition to like leftism. Like leftism is not a threat to any.
That's why we should all write in Ron Paul in 2024.
Oh, I wouldn't mind. He probably died though, so that's the issue.
Do Rand Paul instead.
He's okay too. He's not bad.
I just don't understand. I just don't understand succession with like the family unit that's been failing for the last 40 years.
It's been failing, and it hasn't been failing in the Muslim world. So maybe there's some extent of family values from the Muslim world that we should import here. Maybe
but the issue is that hold on.
America has part of the reason why our family values are failing are because America is becoming less and less more like a liberal, socially liberal, and more against the nuclear family and that.
So the issue I think it was Anti-Federalist that said that this idea like Muslims are like socially conservative and they're like pro-family, whatever. Yeah, let's agree to that. Which is actually that's not. It's a fact, right? That's true. They come to the United States. They're generally apolitical because they're more focused on their job, and they raise children, right? Because they love families. They have a bunch of children. Children who go through the American education system are raised in a society that embraces liberalism and social progressivism. They are not going to have the same values that their parents had, and this is proven by like literally like Indian and Chinese immigrants. Like, yeah, they're socially conservative, but look at their kids. They're some of the most liberal and progressive people on the planet. Like,
so join me in fighting to abolish the Department of Education instead of trying to keep them out after they helped us try to form a Western government in Afghanistan.
Well, I mean, that wouldn't really solve the problem, right? I mean, yeah, the Department of Education is cringe, but like that doesn't necessarily mean like, we should like that doesn't solve the problem that I'm talking about. But yeah, sure, I guess I agree with you.
Their children are different because of like it's you can see the contradictions of the system in itself and like how like the American culture has always supposedly been like a forward-thinking like establishment. Like it's always kind of been in that sense like more progressive than it has been conservative and since the foundation. So like to say like conservatism should hold any weight in like the United States political system is like antithetical to constitutionalism by any means.
I mean, I don't think that's true at all. I mean, I think
I mean, we're talking about a group of people, though like a system they set up was imperfect, was one of the most forward-thinking systems ever established in the world.
But it was literally established to have an extremely limited government with a small tax base that had very little power, and then strong local governments, which would be the opposite of the progressive or left-wing view today.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
All
right.
right,
Like just because something is, well, hold on. Just because something is new does not mean it is like inherently like a progressive ideal or is not conservative, right?
Coming
Like
from coming from like a feudalistic sense of the society is like informing a right of man is absolutely progressive in thinking.
But their progressive idea on how to secure the rights of man was to limit and constrain the government. And left wingers today think like if we make the government the ultimate institution god that can take care of everybody, then all our problems will be solved.
I don't think that's the view of leftism,
eloquently
but
put.
if that's what, just for the sake of the argument, sure. The point being still is that like it is still a progressive thought to institute the rights of man and the rights of man, like the rights of man to choose how they want to be socially as well. And if the larger populace states that like it being socially progressive is how they want to establish the rights of man, which line up, then conservatism still has no place in American politics.
Well, hold on. If we're going to talk about how we control social relations, then I think I'm going to go ahead and take control and divert this discussion back to Afghanistan, because I'm noticing some people say that, because we were talking about Afghanistan, so I'd like to get back on topic. Because we didn't really, I mean, I enjoyed it, but we are really strayed far away. So I think what we were talking about before refugees, I think we talked a decent amount of that about that, but I want to actually talk about something a little different. What do you guys think if this whole episode with Afghanistan and what will continue, will it have any political implications for Biden, the Democrats, Republicans, whatever? Do you think it will have any?
I think if the Republicans decide to like go super like raw, like, oh well, actually, oh man, it's so bad that he pulled out and whatever and all that. I think that could be a pretty weak point of messaging for them, to be honest, given that it's a total like 180 from where they were just like fucking like 8 months ago, right? And then also it's just a relatively weak like messaging overall. I mean, the war, there'll probably be a temporary shift in like approval against Biden on how he handled it, because like there's all the headlines of like all the bad shit and whatever, right? But I think in the long run, people are just going to default back to being like, yeah, no, we should have like like left or whatever, like they thought like just before we left. I don't really think. I think in the long term it'll be a net neutral, if maybe a net positive for Biden slightly, domestically speaking.
Everything you just said, I agree with it 100%. Like that's actually my exact opinion. I think it will have in the short term, there's going to be a spike, I think, in Biden's approval rating downwards. That people see all these like there's like Taliban, those pictures, those videos. But like in the long run, what we're going to see is, I think people are going to be like, well, now we don't have troops in Afghanistan. I think you look at the past, you look at Vietnam. What happened there when like Ford? I think he was president when Saigon, however you say it, Saigon fell. People like, do you see all these images, American diplomats rushing out? It's kind of embarrassing, and his approval rating dipped. But then you look a couple months later and you ask Americans their thoughts about Vietnam. They're very happy. They're very glad. We no longer have any military intervention there, and that helped Ford in that election. Obviously, he didn't win, but it helped him in the long run. In the short run, it sucked. In the long run, it helped. And I actually think you got to commend Biden for sticking with his guns. Not listening to the military leadership, who I'm sure pressured him to stay. He was like, no, we got to do it. It's going to be ugly now, but we ripped that Band-Aid off. It's going to hurt, but in the long run, we'll be able to heal.
I mean, I think that one thing that happened when I was much younger, but that successfully happened, was that the like my side, the very libertarian wing of the right and the very progressive wing of the left kind of paired up on foreign policy and really pushed the message that we need to stop these interventionist wars. And I think we won popular opinion. I mean, the public is just against this at this point. So I think if the old guard of either the Democrats or the Republicans sticks to the war hawkish interventionalist policy, then it would be political suicide. At this point, I don't think they can do it and keep public opinion.
I don't think in Afghanistan it'll matter to the extent that it's political suicide or something like that. I mean, you got to remember that Afghanistan wasn't even really an issue in the 2020 campaign. Like, it's not real. Like, like at least the intervention specifically. I think if broadly there was some sort of return to like the whole neoconservative era or something, that would probably undermine the Republicans. Yeah, I can't see that helping them.
Yeah, I mean, Trump was like the first Republican candidate in a long time who won on a platform of, like, I wasn't a fan of Trump, but he did win on a platform of anti-interventionalism with a Republican base. So I think even the Republicans have come around on the interventionalism stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we are living in a generation that like millions of Americans have been affected by these 20-year-long wars. That I agree that I don't think there'll be any interventionalism for the next at least decade.
We did kind of run around.
Super depends.
We did kind of run around destroying a lot of regions of the world, and now if we go isolationist, it'll be interesting to see what the aftermath will be. But I am glad we're getting out.
Isolationism, like lack of interventionism, I don't think is the same as isolationism. I don't think we're going to have a president in a very long time who openly embraces like isolationism, right? Like withdraw from all of these agreements, stop funding a bunch of countries. I don't think that's going to happen in a very long time, even if Trump, DeSantis, AOC, even Bernie got in. But
no, you're right. I agree with that.
Yeah. Because like isolationism, the way I understand it, is like probably like with the Iran, let's say like Iran, for example, like remove all sanctions, don't even have an Iran deal. We're not even going to deal with them. We're just going to leave, or take out all of our troops from East Asia, Europe, all of them, cut all funding for every single country, no matter what. Like that would have some pretty big implications. And like, let's say withdraw from every global agreement, withdraw from treaties. Yeah, like that sort of stuff. It would really send shockwaves through the world. But I do think, Americans are wary of interventionism. I don't think 10 years will be the window, because I think like forces of the American regime will still try to impose intervention on us. I think the next avenue for that to happen might be Taiwan, possibly Ukraine, which I think would be like horrible ideas. With Taiwan, though, a good amount of Americans actually would support us like going to war with China over Taiwan, which I think is like the stupidest thing, because I don't care about Taiwan. I don't think anybody does.
I don't think you poke a resting bear.
You should care about Taiwan, because for whatever China is, whether, I know all the lefties like to say it's like state capitalism or blah, blah, but from everything I read and from all of Xi Jinping's crazy ramblings, I mean, they are still ideologically Marxist, and they do still believe in this, like, oh, this is just a means to an end to a universal worker uprising. I mean, it's a universalist ideology. Like, I don't
China,
think,
right?
Yeah, with China. I don't think China's going to be just a safe person to leave alone, and they won't try to expand out.
Oh yeah, no. Well, when I say I don't care about Taiwan, what I'm saying is like let's say China invaded tomorrow, we should not go to war over that at all. We should definitely just stay over here. Send a little message, say China, you shouldn't have done that, but we're not actually going to go to war with them. That's a horrible idea. I think in the meantime, we can give them weapons. China, well, yeah, that's different. That's our territory, right? But that's Taiwan.
Or what if China sends a letter to Mexico or America or Canada telling them to bomb the crap out of us?
Well, listen, again, that's a direct threat against American interests. My question is, with Taiwan, there really is no reason for us to have. I think we have troops there. There's no reason for us to have troops there. We can arm them, send them weapons. Like, I'm not some pro-China guy, but I'm not a China hawk either, right? I think that's stupid, and I think it threatens to put us in another conflict that we will not win. We're 7,000 miles away from Taiwan. China's 100. Yeah, we're going to easily lose. There's no reason as to why we should ever military intervene. But we shouldn't say that to China. But they know we're not going to actually do it. But I mean, maybe Biden would, or a Democrat or Republican. Whatever, but I don't think we should. I think it'd be horrible.
I mean, the Chinese have no intention of invading Taiwan in the near future, specifically.
This depends on your definition.
They claim it's China, and then it's an illegitimate state, and they keep threatening. I mean, I don't know if they will. I don't think we should go to war with them either. I think the solution should be trading as much as possible and trying to enrich Japan and South Korea and Taiwan as much as possible, and trying to get them able to defend themselves. But I mean, China, that would be. If war breaks out with China, it's hard for me to imagine that not going nuclear. It's so hard to see a way that doesn't end up with warheads.
What if we let Japan build a nuclear weapon?
Japan does have nuclear weapons, don't they?
I thought they did. They have reactors. How do they not have? They have your enriched
They
uranium.
They not have nuclear weapons.
They're what we call a latent proliferator, meaning that if they were to want to build nuclear weapons, they could do it very, very quickly. But they don't actually have nuclear weapons, bombs, stuff like that. They have the materials. You're right, but they don't actually.
They're capable. They just don't actually have the
Yeah. And they don't do it because of threats of, like international condemnation, sanctions, China. But maybe what if they did? I mean, I don't think that'd be a horrible idea. That and that would what's the word? Shield America. Like that'd take a load off our back, right? Not having to deal. Like Japan could take care of themselves now if they got a nuke.
I mean, I think we just need to wait it out. Like we have all these issues with sovereign debt, and we have all these issues with demographics and workforce with the age of our population. But like in all of those issues, China is like 100 times worse. I mean, their one-child policy was an absolute disaster. They don't have the workforce to take care of their old people unless they, kill them all or something. But they like these ghost cities. There was just so much wasted money and so much ridiculous government spending. I think China will implode on itself if we just let them, if we just make it long enough.
That's where I disagree with you. Like, because I feel like people have been saying that for so long. Like the Chinese Communist Party is on the brink of collapse. I really don't think it is, and I think they're doing so many things right now. They'll effectively ensure that they are not only in control, but they have strong control. I mean, you see them trying to promote traditional values in their youth. You see them, having promoting nationalism, right? This idea that you should probably love your country if you're in it. What they're doing with the Belt and Road Initiative, right? They're strengthening their ties with, countries of the global South. They're really in it to win it. And right now, it seems like they're going to win it. I mean, unless we change what we're doing.
I think, and this is the last thing I'll say before I go, because I think I'm going to go at this point. I've been here for a long while. But I think when people talk about China and like the future of like relations with them and stuff like that, I think that you often see either like the CCP is on the verge of collapsing or they're taking over the whole world. I think that the future is going to be, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if the future is a fair bit less dramatic. Then I wouldn't be surprised if China's internal demographic crises mean that its arc of power kind of continues to go up, but pretty quickly starts to decline in the speed at which they're accelerating, and they are unable to project themselves as a superpower. And we end up more, rather than in a bipolar world, like a new Cold War situation, we end up in a more multipolar world with the U.S., China, and various other regional powers. But that's just a thing or whatever. Anyway, I think that's the last thing I'll say. It was nice talking or whatever, but yeah, I gotta go at this point.
Have a good night, man.
It's been fun, man. Have a good night.
Yeah, see ya, bye.
I agree with what he said to a large extent, but I mean, it's already when I was there in 2008, 2009. It was really open. It was it felt kind of America-ish. I mean, there was very little government presence, and people had open street markets and everything, and socially, it's degraded just in that short amount of time quite a bit. I mean, the government's really had to up enforcement on its own population to keep everyone in line. And I don't know, a lot of people were saying the Soviet Union would never fall and they were about to take over the planet right before they economically collapsed. And I might be wrong, but I don't think they're gonna shoot up into insane powerhouse. I think if China was gonna make a huge move to try to take a sudden amount of control over a lot of the world, they would do it sooner rather than later, while they're in a somewhat powerful position.
The difference in the Chinese view of the difference between you brought up universalism and workers' uprising. Absolutely, you're a Marxist. That is what you believe will happen as a worldwide workers' uprising. But the Chinese adhere to two specific and distinct ideological points, and one is socialism in one country where they just decide to build up their country as much as they can. The other thing that they've decided to not do is to export revolution. So I don't personally foresee them trying to convince people to have this revolution, because they over the last 40 years they haven't done any of these similar actions that the Soviets had done, which was Soviets would.
Can I respectfully, Hong Kong and the Uyghurs, do you not see that as expansion of trying to expand a uniform socialist Chinese ideology?
the Chinese. Well, first things first. Hong Kong is Chinese. Like Hong Kong has always been Chinese and forever will be Chinese. The Chinese, out of just politeness, I guess, decided to sign the pact with the British about letting Hong Kong be its own, like, separate but not separate. Hong Kong is essentially irrelevant. The Uyghur thing, that's just something I just don't want to. I'm not going to touch because I don't have all of the information. From I've spoken to Uyghurs in China. I've heard the Uyghurs here. I just would prefer not to fuck with that. I'm talking about like exporting revolution to other nations, similar to how like how the Soviets helped the North Vietnamese, and for an example. The last 40 years, the Chinese have not done anything close, like not really done anything like that, and I don't foresee them doing anything like that in the future.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think China's goal is not like this, like world domination. I do think they want to consolidate what they believe is rightfully theirs, right? Like Taiwan or Hong Kong, and I think they want like at least regional hegemony. Obviously, like we know economically they're going to surpass us, right? We know that's going to happen. Not much we can do about it. Militarily, who knows about that? But like, yeah, sure, they'll have global influence. A lot of countries do, but I don't think that's really their goal, right? Like global domination. But I do think their goal is to shore up like control and power in East Asia, which I think will have negative implications. I don't think we should let them just do whatever they want. But at the same time, some of the things they do shouldn't really concern America, and we really shouldn't care. Like Hong Kong, like the protesters. Yeah, sure, I'll probably agree with the protesters that I do with China, but like should we sanction them? No. Should we support Hong Kong? Send them weapons? No, we shouldn't do any of that.
I think we should airdrop AR-15s into Hong Kong.
Well, that's a horrible idea. I mean,
and pocket constitutions.
Well, maybe pocket constitutions isn't so bad. AR-15s, that's another story.
It's really funny that it's funny because Ho Chi Minh actually was an admirer of the U.S. Constitution.
I believe. Have you ever read the Soviet Constitution? It was like super based. It was like they had rights to everything. It just nothing was ever enforced. It was all just like smoking, kind of BS. But
yeah, the Soviets suffered from a lot of not to like go on like a thing, but like with socialism, we believe it is like a scientific method. So like each country that declares itself socialist is like watching a science experiment and charting uncharted waters. And like the Soviets suffered from a lot. Being the first, the Soviets suffered from a lot of things people didn't really look out for. And it's unfortunate because Soviet democracy in its principles was super dope and super decentralized actually, and like you had workers councils all the way down to like fucking a factory, and like you'd have a vote, and that's super dope, and it was actually a lot more based on the individual than we thought it would be. It just didn't turn out that way in the end.
I mean, I don't know. I think that there are a lot of tasks that need to get done in any modern society that just suck. Like no one wants to be the guy who has to get into the sewers or clean the porta potties at the construction sites, or there are just so many tasks that suck. And you can incentivize people with cash and a profit incentive, or you can incentivize people with gulags. Like I think theoretically it sounds like a good idea, but I think it only really sounds like a good idea in a world that's like beyond scarcity, where like everyone can just do jobs that they enjoy and you don't need to pay people more to
that's the thing. Like that's a whole thought is like Marx and Engels, like they say it has to be a post scarcity society to achieve like the true version of like socialism. Like it can't work in a scarcity environment. And also, and plus automation is something that is thought will increase like, substantially with the meat. Like I said, I'm not a psycho. I'm not gonna like think it's gonna be utopia. It's fucking science, It's an experiment every time. Like it's not gonna be perfect.
They did make women have sex with gorillas to try to make man gorilla hybrids, and they did starve a ton of people trying to make plants that would grow in the winter. But I mean, I get what you're saying. It would be funny if Chinese influence ends up creeping into Afghanistan and Afghanistan ends up going socialist. It would be like, I won't say funny, but it would be a very ironic giant circle from the Soviet
I don't
invasion.
think that. I mean, with China and their cooperate and how they're dealing with Afghanistan. I mean, I've heard a lot about like rare earth mining, so I don't really know much about that. But when it comes to like whether or not they'll influence their system of government, I think the Talibanese, no, I don't want to say that. The Taliban government will have virtually all control and influence. I mean, they're going to be pretty sticking to the books, right? Like Islamic theocracy or whatever, like Sharia law will guide them. I don't think they're going to get all like, maybe they'll have public health care, but they're not going to be like reading Marx or anything like that, like forcing kids to read Marx. So have kids reading the Quran, not, the Communist Manifesto.
I mean, a new version of the bourgeoisie, like it's known as the national bourgeoisie, is taking over. It's very, and it differs from country to country. And like the Taliban is instituting their own version of the bourgeois class, the ruling class, and it's going to be very.
Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a ruling class. I mean, every country's got a ruling class. Just a question of whether or not they are competent and whether they actually reflect the interests of like the people. I mean, I think every country's got a ruling class, right? Like some are corrupt, some aren't that corrupt. But it's just a question of, is this ruling class good? There's nothing wrong with, like in America, for example, we have a ruling class. It's awful. And we could change that. In China, they've got a ruling class who looks out for the Chinese people, and that's why they're doing so well. That's why we're doing kind of poor.
I completely and fundamentally disagree with that.
Yeah,
I mean, people love
so
to
wrong.
complain about American billionaires, but at the end of the day, we do have, like, every single day, every Amazon worker votes with their feet that Amazon's the best place they can go to work that day, that's offering them the best amount of money. Every person who purchases something from Amazon is voting with their feet that that's the most convenient way to purchase the product.
Like, the issue I have with the American ruling class is not like economic, right? Like, oh, they have $1 billion. That's immoral. And I think, like, I'm not a leftist, right? Like, I don't care about how much money they have. I care about the influence they have with that money and what they're using for that. I don't hate all billionaires. I'm not like
the Chinese ruling class literally developed a social credit school where if you do things that they don't like, they can send you to go get re-educated.
Listen, the issue with like trying to criticize like the Chinese ruling class is I think they do a lot of stuff that's pretty awful. But when it's a question of helping their national spirit, their national unity.
Yeah, but the thing is, you keep on appealing to like a national spirit as a case for why they're doing so well, but that's just untrue. It's not because they're nationalists they're doing so well.
I mean, China's doing pretty well, in my opinion. I
think because they've got such a large economy and because they don't have to pay their workers as much as the US does.
No,
yeah, they're literally riding off of cheap labor and cheap manufacturing.
When it comes to the social stability of their country, I think they're doing pretty well.
Yeah, but the social stability is backed by the state. Like they don't have the same freedoms that Americans do, which is literally built into your constitution.
I mean, you talk about a social credit system. You think that's not starting to being developed in America?
We've got a financial credit system, but we don't really have a social one. No.
Yeah,
well, I do with social media and certain things. I do think there is an issue with state power has gotten so big and so bought out by corporate power that it's kind of become one organism. But I'm saying, like, as bad as that is in the United States, and as much as I want to push back against that, like, my name's Anti-Federalist. I want to go. I'm not a fan of big federal power that gets bought out by corporate power. Like, that's kind of my shtick. But anything that's bad in the United States is worse in China in that regard.
We have to use the stones to destroy the stones.
What are you talking about? So you want to become ultra-nationalist to destroy other ultra-nationalists?
No, that's not what I'm saying. Well, in the context of what Anti-Federalist was talking about, I mean, I feel like you are a big believer in limited government, not much spending. We shouldn't be, doing a lot in the lives of citizens. But when you have a country that's going haywire, and sometimes you need to be a little assertive when it comes from the federal or state or local government so that we can create a society where we don't need to ever exert that amount of authoritarianism.
You just said, though, like, I mean, I'm basically, like, with my neighborhood community, I'm basically a hardcore communist. And then by the time you get out to international politics, I'm an anarchist. Like, if it can come from state and local governments, then I support it. But when it's the federal government, any mistake affects the whole country. Like, if it was the states making these policy decisions, then if something works or doesn't work, the other states could learn from it and people can move. But with the federal government, that is just a hard set in stone. So, like, yeah, maybe for your political ideology, you want the federal government to shove all of this down everyone's throat who disagrees with you in other areas. But then when the other side that you disagree with gets control of that federal power, then you're shit out of luck. There's nowhere to go.
The natural consequence of my form of politics would be that the other side, in their current form, would never gain power. I mean, that's why we would use
right,
that.
and their position is that they want a huge federal government where your side never gets power and they always have power. And this has been the stagnant. So I say we just bring it back to the states and let California go commie if they want to, and Idaho go anarcho-capitalist if they want to, and everyone can choose where they want to live and what kind of life they want to live.
This is absolute brain rot. Okay. Wow. So fun.
Let's try and bring it back to Afghanistan if we can, because we've kind of strayed a little bit far.
That was absolute nonsense.
Yeah, I wasn't. No,
I'm actually interested in this. I'm interested in
Maybe you disagree with it, but I think it made sense what he said to me.
Yeah.
I mean, in the broad scheme, I agree with a lot of what he said. I just certain things I was
So it wasn't.
It's just going to be flips between
the
right and the left every time.
It was just like it's okay. Sorry, how he got there was weird. Where he got to, solid.
Okay. All righty. Well, listen. I mean, we did talk about Afghanistan a good amount. I think we've kind of talked a lot about that, but we were talking about China, and I think there's one area that I would like to talk about that, which is, I'm sure you all know the 2022 Olympics will be in Beijing, and we obviously know about the Uyghur, human rights abuses they're committing. So a lot of people are saying, not a lot, but some people are saying,
the Uyghurs have their own team.
We should boycott the Beijing Olympics. Do you think that should happen? We should boycott the Olympics as a sort of sign to China saying we don't tolerate your human rights abuses, or we should.
Do you understand?
If we were to boycott the Olympics, we should have just our own Olympics, just for Western countries who are against that.
Ignoring how weird that was, do you understand the hypocrisy of the United States boycotting a country because of human rights abuses?
Oh well, I mean, I'm not saying I agree with the boycott. I'm just bringing this up as a discussion point. I don't know. Does anyone here agree?
Everyone's a hypocrite, dude. Boycott that shit.
I would agree, as long as other countries are willing to join us, and with those countries, we make our own Olympics.
I think it would be the most ironic thing in the world if Americans in their Nikes and their consumer products made by slave laborers in China decide to boycott the Chinese Olympics because of their human. Like, we are literally the economic base providing them the incentive to keep doing what they're doing.
It's also kind of true. We just need to crack down on that.
What? There's no God. Please kill me.
Wait. So was someone saying they actually did want to boycott? I thought I heard someone say that.
I'd boycott.
I said the same thing, but only if other countries want to join us, and we can run our own Olympics with those countries.
You attached two conditions to it. So what if I told you other countries would be willing to join us, like say Western Europe, Japan, but we're not going to do our own Olympics? But they'll boycott Beijing. They're not going to do their own Olympics. Would you be okay with that?
No, we could do our own. If they don't want to join us with their own Olympics, then I will join it though. But I do think we should have our own Olympics.
Okay.
Who was the boxer when Hitler first took power? There was the Olympics, and we sent a black boxer who beat a German boxer.
I thought that was the race guy.
Yeah, it was Jesse
Joe
Owens
Lewis.
was the runner.
Joe Lewis.
Wait, there's black boxers.
So I don't know. I think there's value in countries, even if they're doing shitty things and not getting along, in getting together and that became like a cultural.
1944.
Yeah, but China literally they raise their children to be good at the Olympics. Like they get the kids to specialize in one sport.
Bro.
No, they do. There's literally the Chinese sports committee, dude.
Okay,
it's not racist.
Literally how they do it, dude.
China does that thing, so does every fucking country.
No, I'm talking about intense, they do it, man.
Have you never even
Andy Murray level
about
of
the U.S.
abuse.
gymnastics team? They've literally been in gymnastics since they were 6 years old. Like
Yeah, but
fucking
no. But the thing is, if say one of say you raise your kid to do gymnastics, right, and he wins the gymnastics competition, he will get all the benefits from that. Sure, the coach might get a little bit and sponsors or I don't know, but I mean, the Chinese state literally gets most of the money that the athletes win in any event.
Like I don't understand. Like have like a source for that or anything. Like I don't.
Yeah, sure.
American athletes don't get paid for their Olympic competitions.
Don't they?
Yeah,
I swear
I
they
don't
get
think this is really all that important in terms of deciding whether or not we're going to boycott the 2022 Olympics. It's not about athletes getting paid. It's about this Uyghur situation and being more aggressive in Hong Kong and so forth, right? It's like I get where Mario Cuomo's coming from here because it's a good chance to actually make a stand, and either we do it or we don't as the United States.
Sorry, I just refuse to believe a Christian fundamentalist is correct about any human rights.
Who is that?
The main source for there's three main sources for most of any information about what's going on with the Uyghurs. One of those is being Adrian Zenz, who's a Christian fundamentalist. The other two being the U.S. State Department and the NED.
Oh, dude, are you on the tanky?
What about the New York Times?
Listen, listen. No, here's the thing about what's going on with the Uyghurs, right? Because I think, and this is a factual thing, there are human rights abuses, right? It's a question of whether or not, in my opinion, the debate, which is awful to say, but is it a genocide, right? That I think that's the debate.
I mean, that's forced sterilizations.
But the idea that there aren't human
sterilizations,
rights,
it's IUDs, bro.
the idea that there's not human rights abuses is just stupid. I mean, I don't know if you disagree with that. Do you not think there are human rights abuses?
I think mass incarceration at any point is a human rights abuse. Is it a genocide? I don't have that kind of information to.
Oh well, I mean, I'd agree with you with that, right? I think it's a human right.
Like it's a surveillance state, which is not super cool with me, right? They definitely have like over incarcerated people. Like there were terrorist attacks. There was a terrorist issue in the Xinjiang province, and throughout the Uyghur population that was funded through Al Qaeda and etc. The over imprisonment, very bad, not good. The surveillance state, very bad, not good. But to determine whether it's like the extremist of like a genocide is like there's not enough information on the table, and I don't think that there is one because that just just an example of like everybody thought that was happening in Tibet, and then like you see now that it wasn't happening in Tibet.
How do you define genocide? Can you give us your working definition?
The extermination of either a cultural, ethnic, or religious group. The systematic extermination of a cultural, ethnic, or religious group.
Okay, if you come in and put everyone on birth control and say no having kids, and you try to program out their culture from them and turn them into Han Chinese, is that not exterminating their religious group from China or trying to get rid of it?
I don't think vocational centers, which those have been confirmed to be vocational centers, is exterminating their culture. There's plenty of videos and evidence on the internet of them celebrating in the streets during Ramadan and all of these things. They're not trying to extinguish their culture, the Islamic feeling. They're trying to de-radicalize people. And the IUDs, the offering free IUDs as part of healthcare initiatives that the Chinese government does all across their country. Not to mention, if you understand,
have you actually heard a Uyghur who's not in China anymore claim that they were giving them voluntary IEDs? Like there's thousands of interviews. Do you actually know of one where that's what they said?
What I'm sorry, repeat that.
Do you know of an actual interview that I could look up where a Uyghur says left China, who is not living in China, said that that's what they were doing, was giving them voluntary IEDs in vocational schools?
My question is how is that like not a biased source to be to say, like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like how the South Korean government pays people who leave the DPRK $800,000 a year to just essentially be a prop.
Oh shit! So all the videos of people running from North Korea to the DMZ and getting shot trying to escape, those are just those people are just.
Listen, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but but it doesn't make the source any more reliable, especially like the #1 DPRK person. Like, I'm not even a supporter
So
of
do you
DPRK.
think
I
that
don't
when
support it.
Vice News or Michael Malice went into North Korea, do you think they faked all that filming and the North Korea was just trying to prop it to look way worse than it was?
I
Those
have no
news.
position on, once again, I have no position on North Korea. I was using the example of the South Korean government having a literal policy that does pay defectors $800,000 a year. Not to mention, like, there are people who are in SEAL who fled to China that state that they cannot return to the DPRK because it is against policy, but they were kidnapped by the South Korean government. I'm not saying I even like the DPRK. I was using that as an example.
No, I'm just trying to
Can I
figure out
interrupt real quick?
ideologically how
Because I
far down
want,
the tanky line you are.
I want Cuomo to stay here. I have to go somewhere because I
Uh,
got a call that there's like someone say something against the rules.
Okay.
In Cash 3.
My point is that like having political dissidents say things like doesn't make it any less true or any more true just because they're just because they're political.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, honestly, because you don't
I
basically.
mean, the
there's a
satellite
political
images of
incentive.
Uyghurs with hoods over their heads lined up by trains, is that fake?
I mean,
Well, no, again, anti-federalist. Just so there is a political incentive here in the United States to magnify anything that is anti-China, just as there is anything in China to magnify anything that is, or to just magnify anything that's anti-Japanese or anti-American in some cases. Like the New York Times is a very, very outspoken anti-China publication, and they've done most of the big research on the Uyghur stuff. That doesn't make it false, but I think there is reason. Everyone should have a certain level of skepticism when we're listening to the same people who told us about the WMDs in Iraq, the same people who.
Yeah, but
Agree, but that doesn't mean that you just assume that what they say is false, though.
Right. No, I agree.
And
but again, the
it's
number of
not-
sources out there aren't exactly. It's not unanimous. The
Well,
problem is.
yeah, but it's not the New York Times saying something. We have eyewitness accounts. We have satellite images. We have. I mean,
You
I'm
can't,
an
like,
American who was in China
satellite
in
images.
2008, 2009, and was there 2 years ago, and the difference was stark. I mean, the Chinese government.
Yeah, I lived there. I lived there for 6 years.
Right. So, I mean, there are things you can see. Like, it's not like it's just a New York Times article or someone that wrote something. And I'd imagine, or, I mean, tell me, do you, I'm just curious if you think that the numbers of deaths under the Soviet Union is inflated, the Light Brigade, the academic consensus on how many people died under Soviet rule. Do you think that those numbers are inflated, that are they're Western propaganda?
Which consensus? Like, we're talking about multiple consensus. Like, are we talking about from the Gulag Archipelago? Are we talking about from the Black Book of Communism? Like, what? Like, you have to cite a consensus because there is no consensus. Whatever consensus you're saying, I will listen.
So I'm not talking about any one source. I'm talking about the. I'm trying to find the actual number. So 3.3 million officially recorded victims in these categories is the general academic consensus right now. Do you think that that's an inflated number?
Over the span of like existence of the Soviet.
You mean the PRC?
Or wait, we're talking about the PRC or we're talking about the Soviet Union?
Oh, I don't know. I thought we were talking about PRC.
I think if we're talking about the Soviet Union, 3.3 throughout like 1918 to 1991. That sounds about right.
Okay. Well, yeah, I don't know. There is a lot of bullshit in the United States. I mean, you can definitely get ridiculous things that get pushed, but I don't think that the Uyghurs are in happy day camp. I think there's enough evidence to know the Uyghurs aren't in like happy day camps and been given
Without a
voluntary birth
doubt.
control.
Without a doubt. But is it exactly the picture that we're hearing right now? Is it as bad as the Western media makes it out? Is it really genocidal? Are there really forced sterilizations? I think that there is probably a little bit of hyperbole going on in the media.
I just admitted that like a lot of what they do is no es bueno. It's not good. Like it's like the surveillance state, mass imprisonments. Like that's not shit that I'm like for. But to call it a genocide, I do not believe it's that.
Okay, but do you believe that they are trying to not eradicate the people? Do you believe they're trying to eradicate the Uyghur cultural identity in China?
I do. Absolutely.
I mean, that's okay. So that's like a super. It's a loaded question, but also it's a very interesting thing because I'm actually currently reading something that addresses that. Um, it's not even by like somebody who is Chinese. It's actually by Huey P. Newton, and he does talk about how like there should be like a human cultural thing. It's weird. I don't know. Sure, maybe. Like I don't have a position on that personally.
I would say, I mean, they're not only trying to do that with Uyghurs, they're trying to do that with most of the ethnic minorities in China. They're trying to convert them into, or assimilate them, is the way that they would put it, into the dominant Han Chinese approach to society.
I mean, you could say that like all Western countries do that too, to a certain extent. Like,
I
as
agree.
immigrants
Yeah,
come to the country, then usually, as we said earlier, their children become more secularized. I heard someone use.
Yeah, hold on. It's like the issue is like I think it's a complex topic, and I don't because I don't 100% agree with everything that the Chinese are doing. But I do think Western media has a very real history of what he said, hyperbolizing things. Like we can look from the Spanish War all the way up into the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. The Western media is overblown and generally doesn't tell the full story and not the whole truth, but maybe some of it.
I mean, I agree with that. I trigger a lot of people saying that the actual, if you actually look at like economic structure and political structure, the degrees of difference between the United States and China aren't that great compared to how people sometimes act. Like, I agree with it in that extent. We're not some like 1820s libertarian farmer free society, and China's like some crazy regime where no one can leave their house without permission or whatever. But I'm just
I mean,
when you're talking about,
I would say. Oh, sorry.
When
I
you're
would
talking
say
about.
that.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I would say that just because we don't know if they're committing a genocide or not doesn't make it right that they're still sending all these Uyghurs to the to like a camp to get re-educated. Like, I mean, that's still a clear infringement on like their human rights, like their freedoms to
My
just
position
exist.
is, and I'm going to quote the Bible here, even though I'm not religious. Before worrying about the speck in your neighbor's eye, take the plank sticking out of your own eye first. Like keep your own side of the street clean if you're going to judge somebody else's side of the street. It's like the
So what does
irony.
that mean? We can't ever solve any problems. I mean, I've got problems.
Like you solve your own
Does that mean I
problem.
can't go help someone getting mugged? What does that mean?
Like you solve your own country's problems before you try to solve problems in
But every
other
country's had
I don't
problems.
think anyone's saying that we need to be solving their problems, right? I don't think that's.
Then
We're
like
just acknowledging them.
I mean, for sure, like there are issues, and I've not said that there aren't. My point being is
Even
like
in your analogy, you've admitted it's a problem. Like you said, it's bad.
From the beginning I've said it's a problem. Like I don't know what you're saying. Like you're not getting me in some weird
So,
gotcha moment.
so your point is just don't worry about it.
My point is it's not our business because if it becomes our business, then we end up circling back like Afghanistan, where we're in a place for way the fuck too long, spending too many resources and fucking shit fucking all over the goddamn people who live there. Like I just want to think, like stop intervening in other people's business.
We weren't really in Afghanistan for the resources. We were just there to like stop like terrorist cells.
Human
and
rights
stuff.
abuses? Is that
We were there. Well, kind of. We were there to stop like terrorist groups.
Like I said, how did that turn out? We're leaving. We've accomplished nothing, and the Taliban have taken control again.
Well, to be fair, I mean, if we can trust the Taliban, they've said they're going to cut down on the terrorist stuff. But whether they're
yeah, I don't know about that. But again, to bring it back to what got
Well,
us
if
here, we were
China's got
talking about
influence there, they might be able to sort of say, stop it now. Or
we
they
were
might
talking about
encourage it. We don't know.
boycotting the 2022 Olympics, right? That was the discussion. And I mean, unless there's more concrete evidence that comes out that it truly is a genocide or a perhaps a harsher version of I don't know, you could say not quite ethnic cleansing but like, ethnic watering down and putting people into concentration camps. Then I think we should take a stand. This would be an excellent opportunity to show that American values are stronger than or are better than Chinese values in this case, in terms of Chinese government values.
The problem is
And boycott the Olympics. That would make sense. But
I think the problem with that is that we keep accidentally funding ISIS and fighting Assad. We keep, having our interventionist policies cause failed states all over the world. We keep having, everyone could boycott everybody, especially in the current, political establishment. There aren't really...
At least with America, you can say at least their intentions are good. Most of the time.
Do you think
can
that...
say,
I mean, I
they
think
went
it's...
to Afghanistan with good intentions.
I think there's a good argument to be made that part of the reason, at least for going to Afghanistan, was to get missile defense systems and military infrastructure around Iran and the south of China too, though.
My bad.
I mean, I'm not saying it's right. I don't know how anyone could possibly know, but I'm just saying, well, now I'm kind of arguing opposite positions. I do think what China's doing is wrong. I just also think a lot of what we do is wrong. I just don't like big governments. I think we should have more local governments. Huge governments do some horrible shit. It's kind of my general position.
I would like to see the U.S. take a stronger stance against China personally. And I don't know if the Olympics is really the right venue to do it, but at least rhetorically separate themselves from China. And they have changed. They're changing for the better, I think, in that way. And I don't think it should really go anything beyond rhetorically at this point. But the U.S. has been soft on China for far too long, has been looking away on things that are absolutely ridiculous, I think.
It was so depressing to watch the protests in Hong Kong waving American flags and singing American songs and us just ignore them. I mean, it was depressing to me to watch that with the Kurds too. I'm pretty isolationist militarily, but I do think the fact that we don't even economically or don't even provide trade support or any kind of support for these groups that are screaming for it kind of is hard to watch sometimes. We need airdropped AR-15s and pocket constitutions. That's my vote.
And some Bibles. Let's go. Spread the word.
We're gonna have to appease the right in America to get people to vote for it, so we'll throw Bibles in there.
Yeah, we'll add some Bibles and some fucking NRA pamphlets.
Yeah.
I mean, to bring it back to the Light Brigade's point about, don't criticize someone else's problems without fixing yours. I do think there is some value in that, and that is we need to lead by example.
Yeah, but at the same time, every country's had problems in the past. I mean, racism in America during World War II doesn't mean that they can't go and stop Hitler.
I mean, okay, but we weren't gonna stop Hitler. That was
you weren't. But you did eventually. Well, we did.
Because he declared war on us. That's what I'm trying to say. It's the U.S. wasn't gonna stop Hitler.
It was Japan, wasn't it? I swear Hitler was pissed off that you guys got involved.
No, what happened was December 6th, Japan bombed the United States. December 7th, December 7th, Germany declared war on the United States.
Right.
I think the thing that's unique about the United States is that we didn't start as a socialist regime or anything. We started legitimately trying to structure a government that would be in opposition to ever becoming the British Empire. We tried to localize governments and keep a very constrained federal government. It was supposed to be like a country of independent farmers or landowners. It was supposed to be isolationist, and we went so far in the other direction to military bases all over the world, and in essence an old school European style empire that it's hard for me to say that we the idea of the founding of the United States, with the exception of slavery and the racism, I think there's ideologically there's something there, but the current American government to be the arbiter of morality, I think is really, I don't know if I could make an argument for that.
What's pretty crazy about America is that America was like the first country to be founded like by its people, whereas other countries have just been founded by like one group subjugating another group, but those groups ended up becoming that country. So like England, we were just being like subjugated by our kings and queens, but then America, they actually like made their country, and then they kind of imported some people to subjugate. But it's a pretty cool idea.
Well, there was an original argument between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. The Anti-Federalists became the Democratic Republicans, but it was basically, I mean, Hamilton and the Federalists were arguing that like America should be just a new Britain. It should be an empire. We should have a strong military and a central bank. And like Jefferson and the Anti-Federalists wanted it to be an independent free state, like very little government coercion and local communities governing themselves. And the Anti-Federalists won like every election except the first for like 100 years, and the swing between that and what America has become today, is crazy to me.
So that's interesting about the Anti-Federalist aspect, and not to veer too far off topic, but I'm curious, why did the Anti-Federalists really die out? Jefferson finally won; he had the power, and then he didn't really make any changes, and then what? They just held on until Jackson? Is that what happened? Until populism took over?
Lincoln.
Well, it was the Civil War decided more than anything what the federal government's usage was.
Lincoln really expanded the federal government, and it's very easy to understand why. But he was the first president to pretty blatantly step his foot way past like the constitutional restraints on what a president should be, and he was the first government to really expand the federal government beyond what it was kind of supposed to be. But I mean, we had to end slavery too. But it seems like once federal executive power expands, it never contracts back. Like, I don't know if there's been an example of like, okay, we won the Civil War, slavery's over, now we're going to go back to a smaller government with local communities. And, in some ways, maybe we couldn't have, because there were still groups in Texas, like, fighting for slavery, like, 30 years after the Civil War ended or something. I mean, but yeah, and then Woodrow
Civil
Wilson...
War was...
What's that?
I mean, that was... I'm sorry, wasn't that was a few party cycles after the Anti-Federalists really died out, right? Like it went the Federalist, Anti-Federalist, and that was basically political infighting between Jefferson, John Adams, and so on, right? Jefferson does get control, but then the Whigs took over?
Well, I mean, to some extent, I don't know.
Was Jackson a Whig?
Yeah.
So the Whigs came over, and basically the Federalist versus Anti-Federalist debate was done at that point because it was more based on populism. And then the Whigs basically just weren't fit to go and deal with the Civil War. And so that's why, or to deal with slavery, sorry. And that's why the Republican Party came up, destroyed the Whigs, and then it became the Republican versus the Democratic Party. The Federalism versus Anti-Federalism part, I thought, didn't really have any impact on this. The concept did, but as a party structure, they really stopped existing once the Whigs got control with Jackson, I thought.
Yeah, you're right. But as like an ideological battle, I think the political battle, like even under Woodrow Wilson, stretching out into the world wars, I think it really stayed.
Interrupt, guys.
What's that?
Yeah, I was listening like from 3 hours. Okay. So we have mentioned too many countries, but we didn't talk about Yemen.
Huh?
Okay, what about it?
What the
Yemen.
fuck is that? What? I'm not hearing. Hello?
I mean, the situation in Yemen seems terrible from what I understand.
Are you Afghanistan? But if we go like 4 years ago.
I'm a
Okay?
Ford F-150 over there right now if you want me to.
4 years ago, there was a cooperation between the American forces and Houthis. Okay? It was about Al-Qaeda leaders who's still there. Because Yemen, there is some group that belong to Al-Qaeda there. So the question is, what is the situation after the, we say that after the American going back from Afghanistan, going back to America? So what's that gonna affect? So did America do something about that? Did they have some preparation about that? Because
Yeah,
what?
that's so.
Yeah.
Let me. Perhaps I'm understanding this. Perhaps I'm not. Let me check. So basically, you're saying now that we are pulling out of Afghanistan, that'll open up more potential bandwidth to
Yes.
put troops in other places, potentially Yemen. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. I am saying that after America going back to go out from Afghanistan, so Al Qaeda groups in Yemen, okay, that means they are gonna rise again because now they have more space, okay, to get more support.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. So
I think
look
they.
at
I mean, between Al Qaeda in Yemen and everything that's going on in Somalia and Northern Africa and ISIS and now the United States leaving Afghanistan, I don't think public opinion is there for the United States to be involved at all. But I think we're leaving just a powder keg of a situation. I think the United States is probably going to try to levy economic and political influence to try to get the Gulf countries to hopefully keep a handle on it, but I don't think it'll be successful.
Hey, excuse me, don't mean to interrupt, but can you add my friend AYHXSI to the chat, please? We kind of have to talk together. Thank you very much.
So yeah, so the situation is like that. The Houthis forces now are also fighting with
Well, we
Saudi.
work on the farm together a lot, so it's just kind of a brethren thing, you know. We did tassel
War
together.
crime. I was here yesterday.
They've added them already. War crime.
And yeah, I introduced my friend to it. He said he'd have a great time.
No.
No, I was here yesterday and he didn't like.
Guys, who
Okay.
was in
Continue.
action against ISIS or Taliban? Really, on the ground?
Who was fighting against ISIS on the ground?
Yeah, who was there?
I mean,
personally, from you.
Assad, Russia, and
No, you don't. Who was personally from you? Like one of you was fighting against ISIS or Taliban?
I did not serve.
I do not work for no American industrial military complex.
my brother was over there, but I was not.
Okay, I was there. My younger brother was there, and my youngest brother was there. So we were 3 brothers fighting against ISIS in Iraq. I was in Samarra. My brother was in Tikrit. The other one was in Baghdad. Okay.
Who were you
And-
fighting for, if you don't mind me? Are U.S. military or?
No. I'm with the Iraqi forces.
Oh, okay.
My younger brother was with ICTF. The younger one, I'm the oldest one. So the second one was a police officer. Okay. It's we call it it's the 4th Legion. It's like cavalry, okay, in America, or cowboys, or you can.
Are you
say-
Kurdish?
No, Arabs,
Oh.
Arabian.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm from Babylon.
Arab.
And in 2003, when America invaded my country, there was the Poland in Babylon. The Japanese go to Samoa, so American goes to Tikrit, Baghdad, Ramadi. So my part from the city was under control of Poland. So the question is, I have heard someone, I think, the one with the pilot face, I don't remember the name. So he said, I didn't find any excuse that we go to Iraq, that we have invaded Iraq. So after 20 years, 17 years, sorry. No, it's 17 years. So the weapon of mass destruction, which they didn't find it. Okay. The question that my people ask all the time. So first come George W. Bush. And after George W. Bush, who was, I think, Obama?
Yeah, that's right.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right, Obama. So Bush have given Iraq to Iran, like for how we say it, gold dish. And after it comes Obama, then come Al Qaeda, ISIS problems, then Trump make problems more complicated with Iran. Iran have an allies in Iraq, Yemen, Lebanon. So I don't see anything logic in that. So
Well, I don't happen to see anything logical with Joe Biden policies either. So
I don't
Yeah,
think there
yeah.
was a good reason to go in. I mean, he was selling oil in euros and causing some market disturbances that I think the U.S. didn't like. But I think in general, Iraq in general was just an absolute catastrophe. I don't think there was any. I don't think as an American, I don't think we've been given a reason why we went to Iraq. I don't know if anyone's actually made an argument for what that was all about. And Saddam was our ally up until like right before. I mean, I don't know. Maybe someone else can give a reason, but I think that was just a human death on an insane scale for basically no reason.
Well,
Yeah, I agree.
all what I see,
Yeah, I
like
can back that
after
also.
yeah,
Sorry, sir.
Mom, I'm gonna have to agree with you on that one.
after like 20 years in Afghanistan, like training of troops in Afghanistan, same things happened in Iraq, okay, but when 2014, when Mosul was fall down in ISIS control, okay, we have asked for help, that we want some tanks, missiles, RPGs, everything we can get our hands on to fight these radicals. But we didn't get it fast. We didn't get it also serious, okay?
Well, how many times has the United States been caught accidentally giving ISIS money? I mean, we were fighting Assad. We were fighting with ISIS, were we not?
Right. That's right. So 3 city in Iraq was falling down, and there was like weapons. It's enough to start war for 8 years or for 10 years. Okay, like 4 legion have fallen down in Mosul, I think, Tikrit, Ramadi, or maybe more. Okay. Don't and mention also the black market, how they get weapons, and from the Syria, the border in Syria, that's one thing. But let me just give you an image or put you in a point that all people who ask, or all people who have cooperate with America, all people who have hope with the American army that they are gonna fight radicals. What kind of image or impression that you give us? I mean, not you personally, I mean American or the politics. So what kind of impression that we have when we see peoples falling down from an airplane, okay, that evacuates some, also dogs, okay, so we put dogs, canine, but we didn't evacuate our allies. So
yeah, we did to you guys. We did that. We did that to the Kurds. We did that to. And where is the oil that ISIS is funding themselves off of? Where is that being sold to? I don't know, but this idea that the United States hates ISIS and wants to fight ISIS seems laughable to me. Have we not been striking with ISIS for 5 years?
Well, the answer is easy. Well, I think who are founding them or giving them the money, support them, it's Saudi Arabia. I think America know that. They just don't like to see it. Politics. That's what I mean.
Do you think America doesn't like to see it, or do you think that America wants...
Look, like you are my friend, you are my best friend, so you do something wrong, so I say I
I'm
didn't
someone
see
being a
it,
little bit different.
or I don't like to see it, so just put my eye away.
I completely agree with you, 100%. I mean, I think a lot of day-to-day Americans recognize this. A lot of Americans refuse to believe that we're supporting ISIS, but the ones that where the evidence is presented to them, everyone takes your side. It's just I don't know how we grab the reins of control though.
What I want to say that Iran and their allies are getting more stronger because the way that America politics do it. Sorry for my bad English, okay?
It's okay.
Yeah.
The reason I'm just kind of confused why America keeps getting into battles they don't need to fight. That's what I'm thinking.
So, going back to Afghanistan, what I have here, and I have met many Afghani people. Yesterday, I have met an Afghani's family, okay? You know about Mazar Sharif? The city.
No, I don't.
I know of the city, but I don't know of what you're
Mazar
referring to
Sharif
happening there.
have some people, ethnic, who they live there, and they are from Hazara, okay? So who gonna control? Who gonna guarantee their safe, their lives? Trust me, they are now on the border with Tajikistan. Hello?
Yeah, I mean, obviously no one, I don't know what is going to happen with the Taliban, but once again the United States destabilized and then abandoned.
I mean about the Hazara. They're gonna slaughter them. Trust me, someone who was talking about that, and I tell him, okay, they will. They're gonna will that. They're gonna do that. Yeah. They are going to do that. Yesterday have they do it, okay? But Taliban have learned the lesson. They don't going to do it on the media. Now they are killing people, put them in their graves with no one know that. Okay? Only who lost his family, his father or his child know that. So
Why do you think that, do you have any ideas on why you think the United States is behaving the way they're behaving?
yes, I know. It's about Iran. It's just Iran make everyone crazy.
Their nuclear weapons.
They don't have nuclear weapons. They don't need it. Trust me.
And how would you know?
Because you don't have to win a war with a nuclear. You can use your missiles. And Afghanistan is an improvement. It's an evidence.
You should throw it in there. If the United
20
States threw a bomb in the Middle East, they would probably destroy your entire fucking country, not gonna lie.
Yeah, I know. But
Is the Taliban Shia?
no, the Taliban is not Shiitan. The Taliban is even also not a Sunnitan. They are just radicals. Like if you if you disagree with them, it doesn't important to them if you was Sunnitan or Shiitan, Muslim or Christian. They had their ideology. Okay.
So what's their ideology if they're Muslim or Christian to do what they're doing?
No. Muslim is Muslim. Christians. I didn't understand your question. Sorry. Repeat it.
He's saying that they'll kill anyone who disagrees with them, regardless of their religion.
Yes, this is the same thing. Actually, Taliban have the same ideology like ISIS, okay, or Al Qaeda. Actually, ISIS was like a group from Al Qaeda, okay. So, if you disagree with them, it doesn't matter if you was a Muslim, Sunnitim, Shiitim, Christian, okay. You just disagree with them. You don't have to live. That's all. So what was the question about the ideology?
Yeah, so I'm curious, who do they typically side with in the general Sunni Shia divide and faction? Are they more? Oh, good.
This is a long story. Trust me. You have just to. I can give you some source to put. You can search about the dividing between Sunnitim and Shiitim. But now I am talking America. Well, from what I see, from the point, like I said, like they don't have any solution with Iran. They don't know how to deal with Iran. Okay, they have tried many options last years. No one from it. It's just they don't work. So Iran is more advanced now. They don't have a nuclear weapon. Maybe they're gonna have it. But
Okay, I'm 100% disagree with you on that one. Okay, 100%.
well, I don't understand. You mean they have a nuclear
Is
weapon?
that you're just embarrassing yourself telling you you think that
Well, look, there is no emotion here. No politics.
They don't have
My
nuclear
name or
weapons. He's
they
right.
don't have a nuclear weapons. So
wait,
prove
do you
me
think
that they
Iran's
have.
the most powerful force in the world? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, he's saying
No.
that Iran's causing all the issues. He's saying Iran's purposefully causing the stability, and that the United States just keeps getting flustered up by them. So I'm curious.
Iran keeps pissing off the U.S.
I'm curious though. Do you think that the American allegiance with Saudi Arabia is healthy, or should continue, or
Well, I'm gonna tell you one thing. If America and Iran going to war, and I think this is not gonna happen. Like what we say, this is just like a theater now. Okay, that's like how we say it. Like people who talking in the street with me, normal people, they say, "Look, this is only on the media. We want them to get fight, that we get know our faith in the end, our situation in Iraq. We want to go, we want to end a result from this. Too many years, there is no war. There is just, how we say it, like the other or the enemy is getting more powerful. So all what America doing is make Iran more powerful. It's like, you know, the old say, they say, don't attack your enemy long. Hello?
Right.
Yeah, what does that mean actually? Don't attack your enemy long.
Because they're gonna know your tactics. they gonna how I can say it like
If you
it
stay
was
in war with someone for too long, then they'll understand
yeah
you. You can't surprise them anymore.
yeah that's what I mean.
You're trying to say Iran is trying to discover all USA tactics of war?
They already have, trust me.
Do you
So
have
They
evidence
already
or at all? Any evidence at all?
they already have because like for the last 20 years when I was in Iraq, there was allies for Iran who work there. Okay. And we have seen them. They are getting more stronger. Even now, the government in Iraq cannot control them anymore. Okay. So
Yes,
they are
world
they
country.
are hmm?
Yes.
I don't hear you.
Like they're a third world country.
I don't hear you good.
She said they're a third world country. She's saying they're very poor right now because of the sanctions.
Yeah, yes, yes, they are very poor. People are very poor. Trust me. People are very, very poor, okay? Because all the financial or all the, how we say it, all the oil that they buy weapons with it. So the people is poor, but army is not. Their army is not.
So if let's say I got you elected president of the United States, Illa for president, and you got to sit as commander in chief. What do you think the best solution? What do you think the United States should do at this point? Do you think the United States should just stop meddling, or do you think, what do you think is the solution?
Well, the solution just making a deal. It was a good deal. The last 6 years it was in Germany, was a good deal. Like
What do you mean when you say
we,
deal?
well, it was a good deal. We not supporting any allies. We don't make any attacks against Americans group. That was the deal. And how I say it, it was about rocket or something. What was that? The deal that happened in Europe. That
The
there was
Iran nuclear deal, the
yeah,
JCPOA.
yeah. That's what I'm talking about. The Iran nuclear deal. And six six country in Europe was committed to it. And then uh, and then come Trump, okay, and he said no deal, right?
Yep,
Hello.
exactly.
Yeah.
So what is the use? What how does this work? Like
I agree.
because I don't understand it. Like
Well,
I
the reason, to
yeah.
give you some background on why Trump did that, it was in Trump's best political interest in that his base did not like the fact that Obama had made a deal with what they had deemed, our sworn enemy, Iran. So Trump was able to cater to his base, win some political points by getting out
Oh,
of a deal that the Obama administration had struck, because they were able to paint the Obama administration as, anti-American or weak or not working really within our interests, but he's the strong, powerful leader that will make all of the wise decisions.
we all have lessons from history. Okay, Hitler was in Germany. He was have an advanced war machine in Germany. He didn't win. Okay, someone have kicked his ass. Americans, Britain, France, and their allies. Okay, Russia. So same thing, I think, for America in the Middle East. Why they are also supporting like a government like Saudi Arabia? Okay, they are fighting what I don't understand. Like they are fighting Iran, which they are radicals, which they are evil. Okay, but trust me, the Saudi are not less evil than these. They have the same ideology like Taliban. So Saudi Arabia are Wahhabis.
Yeah, and I'm curious, why do you think the United States ended up siding with the Saudis over the Iranians. I mean, they're the two most powerful countries in the area, and everything kind of.
What define what did you say the last minute? A powerful country. Yeah.
Yes.
Define a powerful country. Define that.
I would say one with military and economic influence or power. I would say. I would say both of them do. Right. Iran's had a pretty strong military historically, and the Saudis have really gotten rich pretty quick, but they've formed a pretty strong military as well.
Right. Right. You are right. So Iran have a powerful military, but they have a weak economy. Okay. So because I mentioned that all the economy go to the army, but so on the other side, Saudi Arabia have a good equipment from their allies. Okay, they have a good economy. They are not a poor like Iran. I mean, the people, they are not poor like Iranian people. Okay, but did you think that Saudi Arabia have a good equipment, good tanks, good technology, and a good allies? What happened if what we call it in Iraq? What will happen when the metal, the iron, get hot? What can happen when the iron get hot? So, do you think that a country like Saudi Arabia with a good equipment, who they cannot defeat militia group, Houthis. They can fight a country, or how we say it, a religion army or something like that in Iran, who they are well trained and they have ideology. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand it either. I think part of the Iran deal was that the attacks on Israel from Hezbollah and Hamas didn't stop, and so there was anger among some of the base here that we made the deal and we were playing nice and they kept attacking our ally. But I do think I don't understand.
Well, I think the Israel have nothing to do with Iran. Trust me, they have just make Iran their enemy. Fact, they are not.
Well, so actually, the JCPOA, it didn't include Hezbollah aspect, which is a lot of the criticism from the American right was that it didn't require that Iran stop funding terrorist organizations. It only focused on the nuclear aspect.
That's right. But you know, like how Iran can control a terrorist group like Hamas stop to bombing Israel, because they cannot. Because Hamas, their ideology says we are welcome of any support from any group or country, okay? But they don't have a right to tell us which time we go to war, which time to stop war. So this is two things separating. So even if Iran stop supporting Hamas, okay, there is no change in the ideology of Hamas.
No, I agree there wouldn't be a change. I think the anger was the actual like physical shipments of money and rockets. But I mean, Saudi Arabia, the Wahhabis are teaching children in elementary school to hate Christians and Jews. I mean, I don't think Saudi Arabia is any better. And I agree with you that we have given Saudi Arabia too much military aid and they've used it for nothing. They've been helpful for nothing. I don't know if they want things to be stable. Do you think Saudi Arabia wants Iraq to be stable?
Well, Saudi Arabia wants Iraq to be stable. Yes. For now, I mean, they want it to stable because they got too many equipment from the America. But I am telling you, America making Iran and their allies more strong again. How? What happened if the Houthis get into the Saudi Arabia? Same what happened in Afghanistan, and we see them with an American equipment, jeeps, Hummers, maybe even F-16 or Typhoon. What's that gonna be? Because that can happen. Trust me, the Saudi soldier, they not gonna fight one day without American troops. Same thing like the Afghan.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. But I don't know. I mean, in retrospect, I think we caused the government that Iran has with the Shah. I don't think we ever should have overthrown their government. We ever should have tried to install our own. We ever should have meddled at all. But now at this point, I don't know what we do. I mean, we did sign the Iranian deal, but they were still, the Ayatollah was still out chanting "Death to America, Death to Israel, Death to America, Death to Israel." I mean, I don't know.
That's right. That's
I don't,
right. But
I don't know what we do with that.
let us just be serious, okay? I mean, we are serious, but let's be serious on one point, which who was killing Americans or civilians or make suicide bombing even in my country in Iraq? People, women, children, streets, schools, everything. Even the team from Taekwondo, okay, was killed. Who was doing that? Was that Iran ideology or it was Wahhabi ideology? Who
Wahhabi.
was killed? Yeah, right.
Right, it's
So,
ISIS.
so
Also
look, like we are in a school, okay? You're my friend. I am every day threatening you that we're gonna fight out. But I do that every day, but for 4 years, I didn't do it really. Okay, I am just saying that. That's what makes it Iran. But there is someone who say, I am your friend, I am your ally, and he give you every day a knife in your back. Same like what happens with Saudi Arabia. Who was killing the Christians? Who was killing people in Europe? Who was killing people in 11 September?
Saudis. Well, I guess Egyptians via Saudis on the September 11th one, but yeah.
No, not Egyptians. I am talking about the ideology. Egyptians, there are Christians, there are people who
Right,
don't
right.
believe in God. So there was Wahhabi ideology, right? It doesn't care if it was Japanese or it was from Afghanistan or it was China, because religion is not nationality. Like you can be a Wahhabi ideology and you are a citizenship, right?
So can I ask you? So my position could be very wrong because I don't know. I'm not from the Middle East, but I have believed that we should be normalizing relations and trading with Iran, and we should stop giving aid to anybody, including Saudi Arabia. Do you think that that would make the situation worse or better?
Well, that will make the situation better, but Israel would have be a very big problem in this situation. And trust me, there is no any more solution from what I am seeing, because all the fear was the Israeli. Like we have seen the last war, Palestine, there was like 70 rockets every day go at Jerusalem, right? Tel Aviv, and it was shocked.
Hey guys, I'm going to close this live stage. You guys can move this conversation to a casual chat if you want.
Yeah, okay.
And
Not a
if you
problem.
are in this live stage, please join the Discord server if you want to listen in as well.
Okay.
So, yeah, have a good day, guys.
Okay. Thank you very much.